What is up, you beautiful people? This is Gary Horton. This is pro wrestling. Yeah, it's the podcast.
Woo, woo.
All right,
Yay!
we're here to celebrate the past, present, future, history, legacy, and tradition of the greatest pro wrestling. No. Today is just the greatest sport of all time. You know, you get what we're here for. You know who we are.
Pro wrestling.
It's all about wrestling. That's what we're doing here today on this show. And as always, I'm joined by my hetero life mates, the Wilson Martin.
Wilson. Yeah. There you go.
I think the William Martin is your nickname, and then Wilson Martin is your name. So it's like your wrestling name. The William Martin, Wilson Martin.
I just call him King William. King William the Conqueror.
Like that, yeah.
I do like that. Will the Great.
Yeah. And the man bowing at the knees of Wilson is the doctor, Rob Stinson. Hey, Doc.
Hey, guys. Yeah, that's not so much that, but
okay.
The nail.
Wow.
I mean, it's more of
the Conqueror.
Yeah, but it's a mutual. It's more of a mutual, acknowledgement among peers, not a bowing of the knee. I got Jabu right here, man. We're trying to pull out this Braves game, win this series, beat the Phillies for the first time this year in a series. So come on, Gary, don't do that to me tonight, bro. I'm already struggling with my internet because of the storms here in the Chattanooga area. Come on, man, don't be like that.
We gotta keep the positive vibes going.
Yeah. You coming at me all negative already, like I'm bowing to people.
Well, hopefully feel a little bit better and tell us what that thing is down in the bottom corner of your screen.
This thing, first of all, this is Jabu. Don't disrespect. He hears you. And right now, he's giving us a 5-1 lead in Game 3 of this series. So respect, please, Gary, for in the sweet name of Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews. Please don't disrespect Jabu. I've got his glass full. We're breaking bread. We're supping from the same cup tonight. Let's talk pro wrestling.
All right. Well, we are going to talk pro wrestling, and we're going to talk about famous mothers in pro wrestling. We got all kinds of stuff we're going to do, but mostly, I just want to say right now, hello to John Farmer and Dave Scooby and Eric Dale and Willie Bowen and Ryan Romano, of course. Front rows in the house. RJ Krasinski. We got them all here. Everybody who's anybody right now is in this chat room. And this is the elite. This is being the elite. AEW don't know nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? Eric Dale saying Rob will bow if Nick Aldis tells him to bow.
Oh man, so that's the thing. That's. I mean, that's just be Eric, who I respect. He's an NWA fan. This is my boy, but that betrays a misunderstanding amongst the NWA fam and amongst greatness. Nick Aldis does not ask the doc to bow. Again, Nick Aldis consults with the doc. So, but I will tell you, out of recognition of his greatness, he don't need me to tell him to bow. I bow the knee to the great one.
All right. Well, love that speech. That was good. Anyway, so it's good to have all of you here with us tonight.
Hold on now. You left off. No. You left off Brian Rosa, man.
RJ, did I forget Brian Rosa? I can't believe. Oh, wow. I did. Oh, Brian, I'm so sorry. I saw your name too up there, and I would never purposefully.
Here, I'll make it up to you.
Mission Pro Wrestling hat. There it is.
Reppin'.
Y'all, I got to meet Brian Rosa in person for the first time last weekend. And let me tell you, his pictures don't do him justice. He is more handsome in person than words can describe. Like you have to see it to believe it. You know why Thunder Rosa has picked a winner and a husband. That's what's going on there. That is, you want to talk about power couples. The Rosas are a power couple. And I can't say enough good things about Brian Rosa. And seriously, even though I sound facetious, he did set us up at a beautiful spot there at Mission Pro Wrestling. We got to watch Locked and Loaded, and I had the time of my life being there live at that show in Austin. It was fantastic. So big shout out to the Cervantes or / Rosas. And the only thing missing was Ryan Romano. I don't know where that dude was at. He was, we called him though. We called him on the phone.
Was that the only thing missing?
No. And
yeah.
Lindsay Snow was Lindsay Snow was also missing.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering.
Yeah, obviously, we would have loved to have had our third member of the Bearded Trio there as well. But we always keep you in our heart is the problem. So it's hard to tell when you're not like physically there. You're always with us. What did I say? It was Buda, Gary.
You said Austin. You said Austin.
It's okay. I stayed in Austin, but yes, it was in Buda, Texas. Which is also a cool enough place, too. I really only got to see Buda that one night. Pinball's Kingdom, though, Rob, we talked about this a little bit, and that was amazing. I loved just a cool wrestling venue, and it's going to be where people make pilgrimages to, as Rob put it there. Yes. It's going to be one of the sacred spots of pro wrestling.
Oh, my gosh. You talk about Daly's Place, you talk about the GPB studio, and then you got to talk about Pinball's Kingdom. The capital, the heart of MPW country. These are right now emerging as the great pilgrimage destinations in the sport. And, if you've not been there, this is one of the most fun locations to go to. We dream of the day that the whole trio is there with Ryan Romano, with Front Row, with Brian Rosa, treating us with all the utmost hospitality that he can. Maybe with some of the NWA talent. Polka Dot Pam has been there before. We'd like to have Dawn of Wrestling out there, Heather Hungy. Sandoval, all of the NWA fan, Mass fan, all those guys would love to just have an NWA reunion out there in Buda. And it's just a fabulous romantic location. It was a rainy night, but we were under a canopy and the drinks were flowing, the lights were on, the crowd was just, you can't beat the energy in that crowd. And you guys see it. All you got to do is go to Title Match Network and get your replay or subscribe for $9.99 a month, I think. And you get that and all kinds of other stuff. But you cannot beat the energy at Mission Pro. And we got to see some great action. We got to see my queen, Rachel Rose, in action. Of course, we got to see La Rosa Negra successfully defend the belt. We got to see some great mother-son action here on Mother's Day as we honor that between Anakin and Thunder Rosa. We'll get into that later. And we got to see Genocide and Holodead. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was a great night, and we got to spend it with our brothers and sisters over there at the Nation Show and the Busted Open Nation comrades for sure. It was a fantastic experience.
Well, Rob, I think Will, not to put Will on the spot, I don't think you've had a chance to see it yet, right? Like you haven't had a chance to watch Locked and Loaded, right?
No, not yet. No.
Okay, so I don't want to, belabor the point just in that Rob and I should do a proper, maybe Will, when he gets a chance to see it or something, we can do a proper recap show completely this week or something if we can work our schedules into it and stuff like that. But if here in the chat and you folks at home and Rob, what would you say to somebody? So on the card, for those who haven't seen it, you got to see the Woad take on Alejandra the Lion. Dolce Tormenta, I think is what she went by. Jasmine Allure fought. Those two fought. Roche Chanel fought Lila Gray, if I'm not mistaken, and Vipress and Vita took on Masha Slamovich in a 3-way. And there was Genocide versus Holodead, Falls Count Anywhere. There was Maddie Rinkowski versus Tesha Price, Rachel Rose versus Roxy, Alex Gracia versus Marty Bell, and La Rosa Negra took on Red Velvet for the Mission Pro World's Heavyweight Championship. It's a stacked card. I was just curious where I was going with that is those are the matches. What do you think people have to check out? Like if they're short on time and they're going around, they want to get Title Match Network this week. What was your favorite part of the show?
Gosh, man, the surprise appearance by Masha Slamovich was awesome. She's becoming a really intriguing talent. The match of the night for me, I mean, look, you got lots of highlights, obviously. Like we saw going around on Instagram, La Rosa Negra may be the best. She may be one of the best champions going today, regardless of gender, regardless of promotion. She is dominant. She is a class act. She's an absolute consummate professional. And that match with Red Velvet was phenomenal. So any discussion of like who's got it going on right now, you got to include La Rosa Negra in that picture. Of course, the exchange between David LaGreca, who's a friend of our show, and La Mera Mera and Anakin was incredible. Like my mouth was dropping when they cracked that. I mean, I don't want to spoil too much for those who haven't seen it. I'm sure everybody knows, but they cracked that bottle over the dude's head, man. And I was like, what just happened? That was cool. But for me, the highlight of the night, bar none, was Genocide and Holodead. No doubt. They stole the show. It was an epic, brutal, physical contest. They were all over the place. They were literally right in front of Gary and I. I mean, we caught sweat droplets or oil droplets or whatever that was coming off of Genocide, doggone hydraulic fluid or whatever. And it was incredible, intense. It spilled all over the place. And I'm sure if you watched it on Title Match Network, it spilled across the screen into your living room. It was fantastic. But there's lots of great stuff. I mean, the show was stacked. It was energetic. It was nonstop. I don't feel like there was ever a point in the show, Gary, where the momentum let up.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I'm with you and Mongrovia Mike and Scooby in the chat. My favorite match of the night had to be Genocide versus Holodead. That match was incredibly physical and just it was a blast to watch. But anyway, so those are some things to look out for. David LaGreca, his interaction with Thunder Rosa and Anakin, definitely a highlight as well. And just a lot of exciting stuff. Of course, we love seeing our girls, Alex Gracia and Marty Bell. Also, that was just a good, solid technical wrestling match between the two of them. And so you can't ask for more than that. And yeah, I see Roche Chanel getting mentioned a lot. Becoming a big fan of Roche Chanel. Just a lot of fun to see in the ring. My wife was especially annoyed by Tesha Price. Was happy that Maddie Rinkowski beat on her. And what is that?
I really like Tesha. It's her. She's quirky, man, but I kind of like that. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm a big Maddie Rinkowski fan, but Tesha, man, she's quickly becoming a name, like a big name, and we've seen her a lot on AEW Dark. But I like her mannerisms, man. I think they're kind of endearing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Tesha Price is the wife disliked her for all the right reasons, just because of the because she's very she was what is it, overbearing in the ring with her attitude and just her frustration and screaming and stuff like that. So she thought she was just kind of big childish, basically. So that was it. So she was happy to see Maddie punch her a few times. So she thought she was being kind of a baby in the ring. Is basically what was happening. Those are all the right reasons, right? Like, not that Tesha wasn't doing her job. I also, by the way, am a fan of Tesha Price. I feel like she's watching right now. Now I'm going to get beat up. But anyway, Ryan Romano, see the exact opposite. Tesha is intimidating. I loved the screaming during her match with Maddie. And I don't know. Jennifer was sitting next to me just like, why is she acting like a child? Maddie needs to slap the taste out of her mouth. That kind of thing. So anyway, glad to have you all here. Welcome, James Lawrence. Welcome, Neil Benedict. Thank you guys for showing up. And so we were just talking a little bit about Mission Pro Wrestling, but now we can jump on to some other stuff. Yeah, and I get it, Ryan. Maddie is also not the embodiment of maturity either sometimes. So she, they both got attitudes is the thing. So anyway, all right, so what should we do first? Should we play some Mother's Day games? Should we, did you guys all in the chat, if your mom's available to do it, did you all call your mama? Did you talk to her? Like the old Brodus Clay? Somebody better call your mama. Did you call her? Did you tell her you love her? Got to do it on Mother's Day. Will, did you speak to your mother?
Oh, yeah. I went to her house. I hung out with her all afternoon.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I got it in right before the show. So hopefully you all called yours. And Anything else you guys want to talk about before we jump into some Mother's Day fun for the wrestling show here that we're doing?
No.
Perfect.
The wrestling show that we're doing. Oh, for this wrestling show that we're doing. Okay,
yeah. Welcome, Caleb. Good to see you, buddy.
This little new little project we got going on.
Yeah, thank y'all for bearing with us.
Can I, if I could, real quick before we jump into this, I do want to self-promote something really quick. If you guys haven't already, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do. If you're new here and watching or something, it would help us out greatly. We're trying to hit 1,000. That's the current goal. We want to get there. We're grateful to everybody that checks us out on the NWA post show, but we're also trying to build up our own channel here. So if you got any people you can tell that like wrestling conversation and stuff like this, just hanging out just like this, please tell them about us so that they can also subscribe. That would be amazing. And if you're not following us on the podcast, also there would be awesome. But in both places, if you have not yet listened to the interview with Tom Latimer, we would greatly appreciate it if you checked that out. Tom Latimer has not talked publicly, like in the interview format, really, in a very long time. As some of you know, I mean, there's reasons for that, and Tom's been kind of hesitant to get back out there, but Tom's been going through a lot of stuff lately, and in a good way. I mean, like just as far as life situations, you know, obviously he's engaged to Camille, and he's got this great gig at the NWA where he is regularly featured and dominating in the pro wrestling industry. And so he was happy to get out there and talk to everyone. And so luckily he came and he hung out with us. And we hope you'll check out this interview. It's available right now with Tom Latimer. And he is unlike, he's in a way that you've never seen him before. You always see the angry Tom Latimer, the violent Tom Latimer, tossing people around the wrestling ring. But in this one, he gets into a lot of heartfelt discussion about a lot of different topics. And I'll just play a quick little 2 minutes here just so you can check it out, just to see what I'm talking about, where it gets a little deeper.
When I kind of look back at my life, I go, wow, what? And don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful now, and I'm in such a good position, and I've got a great relationship, and like, you know, I can run a household, and I sort of just grew up. But I just look back at those 10 years ago. Why did you quit drinking why did it take you 10 years? And there were so many chances, so many opportunities. And I just honestly thought I was fine, and I was against the world, and I was angry. And drinking also helped me never deal with any of my feelings. It helped me to just not care. And so when I did quit, because I tried to quit for several years, then finally, with the help of Kaylee and whatnot, that was it. It was time. Even though there was a million events that should have been the time. Once I finally gave it up, there was no crutch. If I got angry, there was no crutch. You know, if something bad happened, so you have to deal with everything. When you've not dealt with 10 years of your behavior and your emotions and what you've done to people and the friends you've lost and the marriages that have gone away and the people that you've hurt, it's a lot to deal with. So, you know, but it was the best thing that I ever did. And I never thought I'd be able to say and of course I always have to be careful, always, but I never thought I'd be able to get to a position where I'm sober. I never thought I'd be able to do it. When I look back at all the opportunities that I've blown, all the people I've upset, how people view me and think of me, it's, you know, like I said, I wish I'd have quit 10 years ago.
So there you go. That's just a little taste of it there. But Tom goes on to tell plenty of stories. There's a lot of, I mean, I know that stuff was kind of heavy, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the personal detail that he goes into, and he goes into even more detail about some of the mistakes he's made and that sort of thing. And by the way, owning every bit of it. And as he makes this journey into trying to better himself as a person. And anyway, I had a lot of fun, and Doc, you were there for some of it too. And it was just a lot of fun getting to know Tom and talk to him like that. And by the way, it's also not all that heavy, because he definitely has some really, really fun stories too. Towards the end, there's a great story about him tearing his butthole. So you'll have to tune into to the interview and check that out. It is available now on the YouTube channel and on the podcast.
Man, yeah, it's gosh, man, to land this interview. Of course, this speaks to Gary's ability to guys. I'm biased. Will and I are biased. We have a great team. All of us brings gifts to this project that we do together. But when it comes to the interview, Gary is the best at them, man. Gary has a way of humanizing his guests and putting them at ease. And just because he's a great guy and just his manner of speech, and you guys hear just on this, it's not rehearsed, it's not any training he's been to, it's just who he is. And to be able to be a part of that interview was cool, but to listen to the way that Latimer opens up, and I just think that it calls us to question ourselves. And when in this age, especially in this like cancel culture age, when we want to hold people accountable, which we ought to, but then we don't ever want to let a person get back up and dust themselves off and redeem themselves. And this is a man who is saying, look, what's happened is what's happened. I own it. I'm not making any excuses. There's really dark things and the things in my heart. I cannot excuse those things. I'm not even going to try to. But now that that's been done, listen, I'm in the process of changing. I'm a changed person, and I'm trying to move forward. And I think that he deserves a listen. At least he deserves a listen, and I think that's what Gary has provided us with. So kudos to you, man. Great interview, one of your best. I put this right up there with the Marty Bell interview as probably your best interview.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. That's kind words and kind words in the chat too. Thank you, Brian Rosa, for listening to it, and appreciate you checking it out. And yeah, Eric, I hope you'll check it out. You guys are being really sweet about it, but yeah, we just have like certain people, and there's going to be more. There's already more in the bank. Next week or this coming week, I'll have another one coming out. And it was another person I really wanted to talk to. And I think I got kind of out of the interview game for a little bit. Sorry if I'm going off on a tangent here, but I wanted to have something to give back to with it, which is interesting because I don't know if you followed Alexander Hammerstone's Twitter here recently, where he's been going back and forth with people about podcasts and doing interviews for podcasts, and talking about that people think he's not being grateful, but he was saying like, listen, but you also have to be respectful too. And he's like, I know that you're putting me on your platform, but some of you have like 500 people and I have 50,000. And so there is an exchange that's happening between the two of us. So there's respect that goes both ways, and something has to be there for both of us. And it's interesting that he brought that up, because that's what I had been thinking about. And so an interview with a guy like Tom Latimer is like, what can we provide at this platform, for a guy like Tom Latimer? And it's like a place for him to speak and to express himself, and that hopefully people will listen. And anyway, so that's all. I just wanted to point that out. It was just nice it felt good to be able to give him a spot to speak in a place he felt comfortable to also talk about everything that was going on in his mind.
Yeah, I think too, man, and we are in the podcasting community, and we have friends here in this very chat that are actively involved, from RJ to Front Row to others. And I'm sure people will listen in on Spotify and whatnot. And I guess my advice to you, since we're in we have a certain fraternity here, and I don't mean that to assert any kind of maleness or anything like that, but we have a certain community among podcasters where, if you're going to do this, and the way you get these athletes, these men and women who sacrifice so much of their bodies and their time and their blood, sweat, and tears to come onto your show, not only do you need to be aware and informed about the sport, you need to know what you're talking about, but two, you need to respect them. At base, I think most of them just want to be respected. And when you go out there with your common litany of questions that they can go and find out, anybody can go and find out on Wikipedia, it really demeans their time and them. if you're going to bring them on to your show, ask them the questions that, that be respectful about it, but ask them questions that pretend to show interest in them as people, in them as athletes, and them as people. Because we're talking about athletes, but we're also talking about human beings here, and they have a story to tell. They're performers. They lay their bodies on the line every single day. They work hard. The life of a pro wrestler is not easy. It's not glitz and glamour. I mean, they're making the towns. They're putting in lots of miles. They're not getting a lot of financial return on investment. They are if they're working hard, but you got to work hard to do that. But when you want to get them on your show to have them talk to you, you've got to respect them. At base, do that, and then show some interest in them as people and let them tell their story. Because a lot of them do want to talk. They just don't want to be asked, what's your favorite opponent? What's your favorite hold? What's your least favorite match? Look, you can find that on Wikipedia. Know the people. Don't just have them on just to have them on. Talk to them like individuals. There needs to be a point to your discussion. And when you do that, like Gary always does, you're going to find that you're going to get a following. You're going to get a pretty good product at the end of the day.
The thing with those kind of questions is like sometimes they're fun, and if you're genuinely curious, you can ask it in a genuinely curious way. But one of the fun things I like to do is I'll listen to a bunch of interviews with this person if they've got them, and then I like to try to find like points that I find interesting in those interviews and I want to expound upon with them. Like, I've heard you say this. I'm curious, like, what would be the follow-up question to that maybe the other person might have missed, or, they just didn't get to, or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, they do get asked a lot of the same questions all the time. And I think that's where I was for a little bit there too, starting to worry about, like, am I just doing this same thing, or are we providing something? So I think we're going to start doing that. I think some of these interviews that are going to be coming out, you guys will see, I think we're going to get some good conversations out of these people and learn a lot. One thing I would like to learn about, Will, is wrestling mamas, because it's Mother's Day. And
all right.
I don't know. I'm bringing you into the conversation, buddy. I saw you over there.
That's how you do it.
You look
wrestling
happy.
Moms.
You had a big grin on your face. I was Will
I'm
wants
listening.
to talk about mamas.
Well, I mean, listen, that goes without saying. No, I agree, man. I mean, as somebody who listens to a ton of podcasts, and this is not a podcast about doing podcasts, but while we're on the subject, I mean, I've listened to thousands of wrestling podcasts in my lifetime. And, just like Rob said, I mean, you can only hear the same athlete get asked, how did you get into wrestling, so many times before you're like, done, So, yeah, I mean, if you're going to talk to these men and women, like, bring some value there, talk about more in depth, something that interests you or interests your audience. I mean, anybody can ask them how they got started in wrestling. But, people want to know more than that, which is, what you guys were able to accomplish with this interview with Tom Latimer, which is super awesome. So definitely go check that out.
Yeah, in front row right there, just saying, and remember, most folks don't charge for interviews, which means they're donating their time to us, so we need to make it worth it. Exactly. They're doing that. They're taking their free time. Obviously, they're hoping to get their voice out there a little bit more, but everything Will just said in front row there, and Rob, it's just, you want to make it worth it for them to make it something valuable, something that hopefully makes them appeal to more people. That should be your goal, I would think, is to make other people. It was with Tom. Tom's been a good dude, and we've been talking about doing an interview for forever. And I wanted people to see Tom the way that I saw Tom, and I think that Rob and I got that out of him in this interview. Like, part of my favorite part of the conversation is right up top where Rob's talking to him about Sasquatch. So that's that's fun stuff.
And you see him light up, man. That's the thing. It's like he lights up with that kind of stuff, and that comes from just knowing the man. Like, it didn't take any special research. It just takes listening. We've all heard Camille talk about she bought a telescope for Tom for his birthday because he loves dinosaurs and Sasquatch and aliens and those kinds of things. Just No, it's just like with baseball. I love baseball. When I go talk to baseball players, you got to, they want to know that you followed their career. Hey, man, you played with the Chattanooga Lookouts. How, they want to know that you have a genuine interest in them. And again, Gary, you do that so well. And I can't wait to hear these other products we got coming out here in the oncoming weeks.
Brian Rosa says they're going to start making up elaborate stories for every time somebody asks Thunder how she got started.
Exactly.
That's great.
That's what you should do. You should
exactly
just make
what
up
I'm
a totally
talking
different
about.
story.
I was in the graveyard, and I was in the graveyards of Tijuana. Nearly
in
dead.
1998, I was abducted by aliens, and they told me, you need to go wrestle. So I did.
There it is. So now you know where Thunder Rosa came from. All right. Well, I guess I'm going to trust you to do this, but we've got a fun game, don't we, about these wrestling mamas. You ever wondered what somebody's mama looks like? We're going to play a game where you're going to see a mama, and you got to guess whose mama it is.
Oh, and of course it's called Whose Mama's That?
I love that.
It took me a while to name it most of the day today, but there it is. Whose mom is that? And now I will tell you, some of these were featured exactly a year ago on a little show called Hey It's Will Daily. I don't know if you guys used to watch that, but if you remember it, then you're going to have a leg up on the competition this one. But I guess what we'll do is I'll throw up the picture of the wrestling mama, and we'll give the chat a couple minutes because there is a delay to put some guesses in to the chat as to whose mama this is. And it is a wrestler. All of these are moms of wrestlers that you all probably should know, men and women, and different promotions. So there you go. There's all your clues, all your criteria. So we'll get started with this one. And I don't know if you guys can guess because I think I sent you all these earlier. So you guys already know. So I don't know if we're just going to like sit and anyways, here's the first one. There it is. So if you're in the chat, if you think you know what wrestler, this is the mom of, I'll give you a hint. This is a good hint too. This wrestler just became a mom herself not too long ago.
Ooh.
That's a good question.
Are we allowed to guess?
Well, I mean, I sent you all these earlier. You should already know this, but you probably agree.
Man, I'm sorry, man. All right, I won't guess.
You won't do that.
Oh, I'm seeing Brian Rosa says Booker T.
Booker T, that's really close. Really close. Same first initial. But no, you guys are right. That's Becky Lynch's mom. Mama Two Belts.
Oh,
there.
Sweet.
Mama Two Babes.
Oh.
I guess, yeah. So
yes.
Rob's like, I did something.
Yeah.
All right.
Rob's trying to throw in with he's trying to anyway, okay.
I do wish we had like background music or something. I don't know. I guess that's how the professionals do it, but
I don't know how we even do that. I guess if we'd had like it as a video or something, but oh well. We're getting better. We are as God made us, and we're always getting better.
All right, here's the second one. This is a wrestling mama that if you have followed, man, I want to give a hint, but I don't want to be too obvious here. Let's see. You guys know this one? Can y'all think of any subtle hints?
I really don't know who this is. So
you guys don't look. You guys do not look at my text.
I briefly looked at them, and then I thought it'd be fun to just.
I'm gonna go back. Hold on. Let me go back. You sent it in the Discord?
See. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a good hint here.
Let me see if I can't find one. Hold on now.
I'm trying to be subtle.
Whoa, who is
this? Got a couple of guesses in there.
Let me see here. I don't see it. You sure you sent us? There we go. Here we go.
I will give you a hint. We have interviewed this woman's son.
Was it a miraculous interview?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, it was pretty miraculous. It ended up being prime time. Not live though.
I want to be honest with you. I still have no idea.
I know who it is. I know who it is.
Let's see if we get any good.
Let's see.
Nobody's gotten it.
I mean, Maddie.
Hey, was the interview worth its weight in gold? Will
Hornswoggle? I was gonna guess Hornswoggle. Brian, I almost guessed. Hornswoggle.
Oh, there it is. Ryan Romano got it. That is Mike Bennett's mother.
Oh, there it is. Look at that.
Yeah. So props to you, Ryan. Got that one right.
Nice. That was a sweet looking family picture.
That really is, man. Look at that.
Look at that. They look happy.
They really do.
That baby is so photogenic. Yeah. Just gotta.
I know.
Just like pose it up.
Oh, she's like, yeah. All right. Third wrestling mama of the night. Here we go. Let me think of some hints here. Oh God, I should have written hints beforehand. Let's see. Well, I mean that's too obvious. I keep thinking of hints, but they're too obvious in my mind.
You gotta. Let's see. I'm trying to think. What's a good hint for this one?
Let's see who the guesses are. Sight unseen, with no hints.
You could could be
you could give a hint about her son.
You guys keep guessing, he might slide into the right answer.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. I was trying to think of that one. Let's see. I can't think of any good hints.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm trying to think.
Let's see. We got Mark Henry, Elijah Burke, Kofi Kingston, guest in the chat, Big E, Slice Boogie.
RJ's guest of the Pope. Did you say that one? Let's see. Oh yeah, you did. You said Elijah Burke. Naomi. See that one?
All right. Well, here it is. Boom.
Oh.
Yep. I could. If y'all think of good hints, you let me know, because I go straight for the too obvious stuff. I was gonna say Mama Worldwide, but I feel like that would have just given it away.
It's Titus. I talked about. I kept calling Tyrus him the other day.
Yeah. This is the mother of the man that Gary kept calling Tyrus. That would have been a good one. All right, here we go.
Well, I said slide into the answer because he slid down the thing. Yeah. Sorry, I just
the Royal Rumble. I remember that.
He slid under the ring. Under the ring.
Right. Here we go. Let's see. Oh man.
I'll tell you what, this Joker came very close to having to fall and pray real recently. He might have had to. He might have done it.
All right.
Right?
I mean, I think he did. But
he fell and prayed, man.
Brian Rose says The Undertaker. Oh, there's Rock says 79 with Finn Balor.
There it is.
It's Finn Balor's mama.
It's Finn Balor's mom.
Look how sweet Finn Balor looks there, man. In the park,
man. He gets it from his mom.
What?
So happy to just be hanging out with his mom at the park.
Oh no! What a good son. All right,
y'all seen the movie 210 to
310 to Yuma.
310. Yeah, 310 to Yuma.
You would get there eventually.
I was thinking
just helping you.
I was thinking of the restaurant 210 Jack that we ate at earlier. 310 to Yuma. Remember that line, man, when he shoots the outlaw, trash talking his mama, and Ben Waite says even bad men love their mama.
That's right. All right, yeah. Let's keep rolling.
Well, who's this pretty mama?
Oh, there you go. That's a good one.
I was just being legit. I didn't mean it as like a hint. I was just saying, who's this pretty mama?
It sounded like you were doing an impression.
Oh.
Oh, all right. So we'll start giving some hints. So the son, there's your hint of this mother, recently won some gold over in Major League Wrestling. That might be too much of a hint, but
it is a hint.
We got to give you something. We got to give you something to go on. MLW champion right here.
Wow.
What are you laughing at?
I'm saying, yeah, that is quite a hint.
We got no correct guesses. Let's see. You guys are on the right track. You're getting there.
I have it. He's no longer a champion.
Well, I know, but he recently was a champion.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Which is what I said.
I just got a spoiler for MLW. I had watched this past weeks, and apparently he don't have it no more. So everybody's guessing Myron Reed
away.
It's actually Leo Rush.
It's Leo Rush. Sorry. And there's a specific reason I didn't say a current MLW champion. I was trying to help you out a little.
Oh, I got you.
Yep. Awesome. All right. So this one's a little tougher. Not that they all haven't been tough. But here we go. Whose mom is it? She's she's in the arena. She's obviously, hanging out with her child, who is a wrestler. You can see the taped up fingers around her shoulders. She's posing. Let's see. This mom. Oh man.
This obviously, I think here at this, if you zoomed in on the turnbuckles, you might see it was from WWE, possibly. But now he's
zooming in on the turnbuckles.
But it was part of the hit. Listen, I'm just let's go with it. But now he's making a bit more of an impact these days.
Yeah, and I would say when this picture was taken, she was probably taking a lot of losses at the time, this time in her life as a mom. We'll see. We got Macho Man, Randy Orton. Let's see if once Gary's hint comes through, maybe we'll get some more guesses. Doc Gallows, that's a good guess.
Brian Myers, I see it.
Oh. Yeah.
There you go.
Nailed it. I had to flip this image. That's why his shirt is backwards. It wasn't supposed to be that way. But I wanted to keep all the moms on the same side.
Oh, word.
I flipped it around. But yeah, there you go. All right, a couple more. Let's see if we want to do all these. I'm going to skip one. All right.
Ooh.
Who's
mom? Mama.
What's up, girl?
Okay, calm down, boys. Calm down, boys. Calm down, boys.
Huh.
Whoa.
Foxy. Oh, let's see.
She ain't but 19 years old, huh?
It's different now, Rob.
All I gotta know is, did she have a son or a daughter? Because I gotta know what I'm getting into. You know what I'm saying?
What in the name?
Here's your spoiler. She's the mother of a daughter.
Okay.
So that's going to be your hint on this one.
I'm like, what in the name of Rachel Rose and Sky Blue is going on here?
Brian Romano's like, her kid must be young, right? Like but like Tennille, I see Tennille getting guessed in there. And I mean, that's a good guess. She does kind of look like Tennille Dashwood. Like there's something about her face that does.
She does. Deanna, that's another good guess.
RJ coming in strong though.
RJ,
she's looking like a
guess. That is Alexa Bliss's mama.
I was like, that girl looked like an Alexandra Couturier contest.
Oh man,
that's a pretty moment right there, boy. That's one pretty moment.
Right. Last one of the night. If our NWA fam doesn't get this one, you might as well just hop on out of the chat.
Spoilers.
This is wrestling's number one mom of all time. As if I even have to check the chat to see if anyone gets this one correct.
Oh, RJ bounced in quick.
Already coming in. That is NWA's number one mama. Pro Wrestling's number one mama. Mama Storm. And that is her baby boy, the Perfect Storm. Of course, Tim Storm. And so Stem Storm.
You got it, Damien.
That's when you're trying to get that guess in real fast in the chat, and you just don't even use spaces, and you don't proofread it, and you just try to get it in there.
Storm.
Quick as possible. But as always, if you're watching, Mama Storm, happy Mother's Day to you. The NWA fam loves you, and that's going to be my favorite. Whose mom is that wrestling edition? So thanks everyone for playing.
Yeah, this was fun. And yes, Ryan, that is not Danny Deals dressed up as Mama Storm.
No, that's the real Mama Storm.
I don't support that.
We know Gary stands on that.
How dare he?
Gary is on record of saying that is his least favorite segment or narrative in NWA Power history.
I think it is
Danny Deals.
I think it still is. Yeah, I definitely said it was, and yeah, I'd say probably to this day still my least favorite thing they've ever done. I don't know why it bothered me so much. Besides the disrespect to Tim Storm, it was also like, why is Joe Galley acting like damn Danny Deals is Tim Storm's mama? Like, full well, Joe Galley. Because I just want to believe in the credibility of Joe Galley, and Joe Galley's over there going along with it.
Look, we've seen a lot of Joe Galley subterfuge here in the last few weeks, man. The true cut. This is more the same.
Here we go.
Yeah,
there's that word.
It's more the same. I also want to send a special shout out and happy Mother's Day to another beloved mother in the hashtag NWA fam, and that is our very own Thunder Rosa, who is the proud mother of Anakin. And we got to see the two share a ring together in Buda, Texas, against David LaGreca and his henchmen. So we've got Mama Storm and we've got the lovely Thunder Rosa, fabulous mother, raising that young man right. And it shows with the way he conducts himself and how he has thrown his heart and soul into the family business. So happy Mother's Day, Thunder Rosa.
Yeah, Brian, I definitely... That was not my favorite either, for sure. I may still take Danny Deals as Mama Storm over that, but definitely Camille and Thunder Rosa do not need people to speak for them. And besides that, both of those women are women that speak with their fists. So just they're not there to debate. It's like the time they put in WWE. Do you remember when Chris Nowinski and Scott Steiner had to have a debate? Like they were gonna, like they put podiums in the ring and stuff. Does anybody remember that? That was so weird.
Nothing surprises me nowadays outside the NWA.
Scott Steiner was put in the ring to do a debate. Just let that sink in. That's all. Scott Steiner, like an algebra equation.
Scott Steiner. All
right. Well, the Mother's Day antics continue. Ryan, Rob, how you feeling over there? How's the Braves? They okay?
5-1, man. Yeah, they're. Hold on, let me give him a little. There you go, Jabu. Jabu's getting thirsty. Got a runner on. Philly's got a runner on first, but the Braves hold strong 5-1. So
there you go. All right. Well, I found an article about the most memorable mothers in pro wrestling, and so if you guys want to, we can go through that.
I think this comment is the perfect lead-in to this segment because it perfectly sums up what we're about to cover. And I will give a disclaimer here. Gary and I were talking about these before the show, and I think it's more apt to call this segment the top 10 ways WWE has belittled motherhood over the years.
Well, to be fair, they're not all WWE, so
that's true.
I roll with that, but
that's the only reason.
So if you guys are down, I'll throw this in there, Rob, unless you have something, because you look like you're just already frustrated. You're just like
that's just his face, man.
You got resting Rob face.
He's got resting Rob face.
See, that's just normal.
This is what you
all
like.
Right. I see some names dropped in the chat already, and a couple of those you're gonna see them pop up in this list. But let's go. This is from Goliath.com, and it was the 10 most memorable mothers in pro wrestling. They said the whatever the case, here are the instances where someone's mother really made an impact in the wild and woolly world of professional wrestling. That is what we got. Number 10 listed as the number 10 most memorable mother is Vicky Guerrero. Look at that. Oh, Vicky. It says Vicky Guerrero was one of the most irritating and evil authority figures ever seen in professional wrestling, but it really shouldn't come as a shock that someone who was married to Eddie Guerrero knows how to play a really good heel character. More importantly, for this list, before she rose to an on-screen power within WWE, Vicky Guerrero's original appearances on WWE TV came as the mother of Eddie's children, including one Shaw Guerrero, who would train and become a wrestler and would later appear on NXT years later and at Mission Pro Wrestling. I think did she ever show up at Mission Pro? Yeah, I think she did.
She did. And she was a guest announcer. That's right.
During a ridiculous storyline, which revealed that Eddie was somehow the father of Rey Mysterio's son, Dominic. As a result, we got to have several weeks of Vicky herding her children around backstage while pleading with Eddie to stop torturing Rey and his family. Everything culminated in a ladder match that saw Vicky Guerrero get involved and knock Eddie off the ladder in a last-ditch effort to get him to give up his current path of destruction. Powerful stuff. Sorry, that should have been powerfully ridiculous stuff that left most wrestling fans scratching their heads. So number 10, Vicky Guerrero. Congratulations, Vicky. You are memorable. All right. I can see Will laughing, and then I just feel like I'm hung out to dry here.
No. You
Rob's like, great, I got nothing to say about any of this trash. And
yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I'll be here to show my contempt.
We're celebrating mothers. For crying out loud, people. Let's see. Anyway, I do genuinely think Vicky is a lot of fun, though. So,
yeah, she's great.
All right, number 9. See, they're teasing you though, because Vicky Guerrero is just legit a wrestling mother, and so is number 9 here. That is going to come in as the lovely Helen Hart. Stu Hart's the one that gets all the credit for the Hart Dungeon, the raising an entire clan of professional wrestlers. But according to many people, including Bret Hart himself, Helen is the power behind the Hart family, running the financial side of Stampede while also raising a massive family. When the Hart family feud between Bret and Owen made it onto WWE TV, Helen and Stu made several appearances as well. In perhaps the most memorable appearance by the Hart matriarch, Helen was directly responsible for Bret Hart losing the WWE Championship to Mr. Bob Backlund at Survivor Series 1994 when she listened to the manipulative pleas of Owen Hart and threw in the towel on Brett's behalf to give Backlund the victory. Ladies and gentlemen, there she is, the lovely Helen Hart. I will see. They're going in with like legit wrestling mamas, right?
Yeah, they're getting us. They're baiting us in. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, all these people in the chat be like trying to guess all these like random silly storylines. This ain't that kind of list. This is good mamas. It's going to take everything seriously. I don't have a picture for this next one. I'm just going to tell you they rated number 8 as Randy Orton's many different wives. That's what they put.
Oh my gosh.
Oh God! Now Rob's completely checked.
Hey, I in the words of the great Caleb Harvey, I'm just here so I don't get fined.
We will find you. We will find you.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Anyway, it just says that basically it says that despite Orton looking like a emotionless tattooed cyborg, Orton's wife has been played by a different actress every single time she's made an appearance on television. Officially, Orton married his first wife in 2005. They divorced in 2013, and Orton has since remarried. Had a first child in 2008, who has also appeared in WWE on TV, which technically means that any actress playing his wife since has also been pretending to be the mother to his daughter. There's something to be said about the fact that WWE would put Orton's infant child on TV, but decided to pay an actress to play his wife. We're just not sure what. This also harkens back to a story told by Mick Foley, who married an actual fashion model in real life, only to see WCW pay a woman to play his wife in a series of vignettes because nobody would believe Cactus Jack's wife was hot.
I mean, that makes sense, though.
It says, sure, we made a small logical leap to get Orton's fake wives on this list, but we mostly just wanted to make a joke about how many different women have played Randy Orton's wife on WWE TV over the years. So that's why they threw those in. All right, you fanatics. Number 7 on this list. You bunch of animals. It's going to be the lovely Mae Young. Look at her.
Nothing scandalous here, just your classic.
Yeah.
Your classic female wrestler.
Exactly. If you think you know where this is going, I'm going to warn you right now that you are absolutely correct. And any emotional distress you suffer by continuing watching this video is your fault. Okay?
That's a good disclaimer. That's good.
During the Attitude Era, Mae Young entered into a relationship with sexual chocolate Mark Henry, which was exactly as uncomfortable to watch as you might have guessed. And to up the comedy factor, somehow Young became pregnant and eventually gave birth on an episode of Raw, which was just, well, it's indescribable. So we have pictures here. The fact that it legitimately caused Gerald Briscoe to vomit on live TV says more than anybody on this show ever could. Oh, yeah. And she actually gave birth. As you can see there, we've included photos as Will covers his face. She actually gave birth to a rubber hand because this was the WWE Attitude Era, the one that everybody says was one of the best eras of all time, perhaps the best era of all time. And most things actually made zero sense. The joke doesn't end there, though, because years later, as you can see in this picture, on an anniversary episode of Monday Night Raw, a man dressed up as a giant hand appeared, claimed to be Mae Young's son, proving that WWE has never met an angle they aren't willing to call back at some point and pretend it's hilarious. So there you go. Number 7, Mae Young. Just look at those photos. I mean, it's very rare you get to see like the baby like right at the time of birth and then all grown up. It's beautiful. Anyway, Willie Bowen, I think you've made the most insightful comment about this. And I couldn't agree more, sir. All right. Are we still going?
What? What in the name of James Lawrence's contempt for the WWE was going on there?
All right.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it's not going to get any easier, everybody, because next up on the list, we've got.
What are you doing, Will?
I don't want that to be a clip and then somebody come up and then see my face. I mean, I know my name's down there, but I'm trying to just.
Will feels like we're being offensive to mamas here.
I don't feel like you're being offensive to mamas. I feel like you're being offensive to wrestling fans, which is our target audience.
It's a Mother's Day episode. We got to talk about these things.
All right, fine.
So number 6 on the list is the lovely Lita. You don't remember Lita had a kid? Lita had a kid. Do you remember the daddy? Oh, it was Cade. It was Cade. Remember when he knocked up Lita that one time? Whether or not Lita counts as a mother depends on your personal definition, I guess. But she was impregnated by Cade's demon seed in like 2000 and something. I don't remember. Anyway, somehow she ended up having maternal feelings towards that child. This is deep stuff. All right, this is WWE. Yeah. She had maternal feelings, even though this child was the result of an unwanted sexual encounter, apparently. So I'm not sure this would play today, actually, now the more I think about this. Listen,
none of these.
I'm not going to try to justify this. It's terrible and it's uncomfortable. And it included more than a few unfortunate implications. The important thing is that it ended as wrestling pregnancies always should do. No, not should do. It was the tasteful accidental miscarriage as a result of an accident in the ring, and somehow she lost her unborn child, managing to unite Cade and Lita as a couple, which seems probably like a logical turn of events. It also led to the scene over to the right there where Gene Snitsky made fun of them by drop kicking a baby into the crowd. So there,
classic. That's a timeless wrestling storyline right there.
I want to talk about Dark Side of the Ring. Somebody should bring up these things. This is WWE, ladies and gentlemen. WWE.
And people ask me, they say, why are you an NWA fan, Will? I feel like this list can just point them that direction because you'll never see any of this garbage on there.
Caleb, this list was by a website called Goliath.com. I was searching and I legitimately not enough people write mothers lists about professional wrestling.
I gave you 4 or 5. I gave you 4 or 5 today.
You can give me 4 or 5 pictures, or 4 or 5 pictures so you can set them up.
You don't know how to Google Magnum TA Nikita contract signing? Maybe
it's not my fault. Next up on the list, number 5, we're going to run right into the lovely Dawn Marie. There she is. Do you remember this? If you thought that it doesn't get worse than fake rubber hands or miscarried demon fetuses, I feel like I'm just like rubbing Rob the wrong way this whole time. Let's talk about the strange case of Dawn Marie here. As you can see, she tried to seduce Tori Wilson's actual father. This is Tori Wilson's real father, Al Wilson. Does anybody remember this? She was trying to mess with Tori's head, presumably, but it lasted for weeks. Had terrible acting. Al Wilson is not an actor. And along the way, we saw Dawn persuade Tori into an implied lesbian experience by promising to stop her pursuit of Tori's dad. There was numerous uncomfortable makeout scenes, a lot of Al Wilson naked flesh on television, and anyway, I don't know. In the end, what happened? Dawn Marie married Al Wilson on an episode of SmackDown and became, you guessed it, Tori Wilson's stepmother. Happy Mother's Day, Dawn Marie. Despite she's only a few years older than Tori, and it didn't end there, by the way. In case you were wondering, Al happened to die on his honeymoon due to too much sex, and so you had that lead into the first ever stepmother versus stepdaughter match, and just like you might have guessed, like most other things on this list, it was terrible. So there you go. We've officially
much like our viewer numbers right now.
We've run off Ryan. he's like, I'm going to make like Mae Young's baby and hand out. But anyway, all right. Boy. Well, it was good seeing you, Ryan. Thanks for being here. Ryan Murphy says Company Up North does really bad soap operas and gives bad porn movies an even worse name. You got that right. They got more of a plot than this. And then randomly, by the way, this list, though, it goes right back at number 4 to an actual, just another wrestling mama. It is Sweet Saraya, the mother of Paige. You know Paige? And she runs her own wrestling promotion over there. If you ever wondered what JBL was talking about when he referred to Paige beating her own mother to win her first wrestling championship when Paige was on SmackDown, well, that's true. Sweet Saraya Knight. She started wrestling in the early 90s for World Associations of Wrestling, which was her husband's promotion in the United Kingdom. She would also appear in North American women's promotion Shimmer and Shine. She would bring her own son and daughter into the business, both teaming with and fighting against Paige, then known as Brittany Knight. In fact, Saraya still wrestles to this day while also helping run her husband's promotion, as well as their offshoot female wrestling company, both located in England. Meanwhile, you obviously know who Paige is. And her son and stepson also wrestle on the independent UK circuit as well. They are a legitimate UK wrestling dynasty. Also, fun fact that I'm sure Rob would bring up if I didn't.
Don't bring it up. Let me bring it up.
All right, you bring it up, then, Rob.
Give him something.
Drop. It is the Saraya Knight that is the wife of Ricky Knight, whom the Knight family, that is the very Knight family that trained our current world's heavyweight champion, Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis was trained by the Knight family and currently sits at day 832 of one of the most decorated, illustrious championship reigns in history.
Day 832?
932, my bad.
Oh, what are you doing over there?
I'm over here watching them. I'm sidetracked. But yes, it is the Knight family that is the that has deep ethereal connections to the national treasure, Nick Aldis.
There you go. I knew that had to come up. So well placed at number 4. I have no idea what the logistics of this list are, that they go from like a couple of actual mamas to like the most ridiculous things in motherhood ever on wrestling to another mama. And here's another mama, which comes in at number 3. This is obviously, we're back to weirdness again, but it is Mama Benjamin. Shelton Benjamin, you all know him. Incredible college athlete, great professional wrestler. He was doing his own thing in WWE, actually looking really good at WWE. But with that said, he often struggled with his promos. Apparently was one of the reasons he got held down. He didn't have like much of a character. He was just a really good wrestler. And so they decided, because this is WWE again, we're talking about, that they wanted to give him some kind of hook. And so what they did was they hired a comedian by the name of Thea Vidal. And she played Shelton Benjamin's mama, who they referred to as Mama Benjamin. The role had her play like a fairly stereotypical and probably racially insensitive part as a large, angry black woman. who would distract the referee and her son's opponents in order to get Shelton to pick up victories. However, it really didn't help Shelton further his career very much. Instead, it kind of just made him a comedy wrestler in a way, looking back. And rather than the skilled actual competitor that he was, Mama Benjamin was written off TV in about 3 months after her debut. But for some reason, she's number 3 on this list. Mama Benjamin, ladies and gentlemen. Do you guys have fond memories of Mama Benjamin?
It was entertaining. I didn't hate this like I hated that. This was not offensive like some of the other stuff was. This is more comic relief, So,
well,
yeah, it's just one of those things that, to your point, I mean, I've always been a huge Shelton Benjamin fan, and they've done this to so many people. I mean, I remember they did this in the last few years to Bobby Lashley, where they did a segment and, apparently it was his sisters or something like that, but it wasn't really. And it was just, it's this mentality like that you just summed up where it's like, oh, they're not, getting over like they should be for some reason. So we've got to like either turn them into a comedy act to generate interest or write them off. And it's like, a guy with the caliber of Shelton Benjamin obviously doesn't need something like that. So
in WWE, they just can't accept like the idea of somebody just being like, "Oh, hey, we're
just being a great wrestler."
He's just a really good wrestler.
Yeah,
he's big,
imagine that,
bad, and a good wrestler. And like guys like Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley don't need other things. They're intimidating and good. And so,
if your premise is that your audience is not capable of following good wrestling and a reasonable storyline, then you're led to doing stuff like that, But if your premise is that your audience is intelligent, likes prize fighting, you can follow a legitimate, credible story centered around championships, then you're not going to see that so much.
Doc, I'm glad you said that because it does make me wonder. Speaking of like credible wrestlers, like really good professional wrestlers, and then giving something that they don't need. I wonder your thoughts on our number 2 entrant here when we talk about the legendary performer known only as Marcus Alexander or Buff Bagwell, and when they introduced his mother, Judy Bagwell, one of the most infamous mothers in wrestling. She made waves on and off screen in WCW and WWE. She was the real life mother of Buff Bagwell. This is not fake. She made several appearances on WCW programming. Each was probably more ridiculous than the last. At one point, she was one half of the WCW Tag Team Champions after Rick Steiner made her his partner to replace the injured Kitty Chaos. And in fact, she was never defeated for that belt, by the way. So this is pro wrestling history. She's never defeated for that belt. And it was stripped from the team when Steiner went down with an injury. Later, Bagwell would be seen hanging around backstage at WCW events supporting her son, which led to her being hit with a canyon cutter and becoming the object of the completely ridiculous Judy Bagwell on a pole match between Buff and Canyon. And yes, they really did call it that, although it was actually a forklift, not a pole, as you can see in the pictures there. They, I think the logistics, no matter what Vince Russo wanted at the time, and I'm pretty sure that was Vince Russo at the time, they couldn't put Judy Bagwell on a pole, an actual pole. After WCW folded, Buff was signed by WWE and his mother too to become part of the Invasion. But he was, or actually, no, I guess it was just Buff. And then he was fired shortly afterwards. And the reports, if you listen to Jim Ross on his own podcast, it was amidst the reports that he literally had his mother call Jim Ross to tell him that Buff did not feel good. He was too injured to compete on house shows, to which JR allegedly replied, "This is the last conversation you and I will ever have about your son, because he is a man. He should be calling me, not you." And that is roughly about the time that Buff Bagwell's career ended in the WWE. And there you go. Judy Bagwell, former WCW tag team champion, and perhaps the most famous mother in pro wrestling history, if not for our number one. But let's take this time. Will, as a tag team guy, this is obviously important pro wrestling history. Doc,
yes,
as,
for sure.
as a fan of wrestling in general, obviously you gotta give big props to Judy Bagwell. Guys, want to add anything to this?
No.
I will say that. See, like this era of, especially in the latter years of the WCW, it's not as though everything that was going on was terrible. You had a lot of good stuff going on, like Lance Cade's emergence. Booker T was like really hitting his stride as a singles wrestler. There's a lot of things that I really cherish from that time. But then there's part of it where it's like the WWE and WCW were trying to out asshole each other. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're trying to out freaking ridiculousness each other. And this is one of those. Buff Bagwell never needed that, by the way. Buff Bagwell is a fine talent, great body, good mic skills, looked great. Had a phenomenal run with Scotty Riggs as the American males, and I know that's something that he doesn't look back on right now so favorably. But I think at the time it was a pretty good-looking tag team that really a lot of the younger fans liked and all that. Buff Bagwell never needed that kind of angle to get himself over. He was charismatic. A lot of us in the chat here have seen Buff Bagwell and have met him and all that. And but this is, again, a low point, like many of these mother stories. You got so many good mother stories that aren't appearing on this list that you know,
we
that
didn't
it's
have
a shame.
Pictures.
Well, I mean,
maybe you could tell us those after this. Listen, yeah. I'm sorry that I'm the frickin' Howard Stern of the show today, but I'm just trying. We're adding some spice to the Mother's Day episode of the live show. So here we are.
No, I mean, you got to talk about it. I mean, in the history of the sport, in prize fighting, fighters, whether they be men or women, don't bring their mommies into the ring. Typically, they do it. It's an extraordinary thing when it happens, but when it happens and it's done well, it's pretty cool. And I can think of 3 instances in which it was done well, and we'll talk about that later. But these other ones are they're just like, hey, look, we're not getting by well enough on the wrestling product, so let's pull this Jerry Springer stuff into it. So.
All right. Well, let's take a look at the number one mother, and we can finish off my disagreeable list here from Goliath.com. Sorry, Goliath. Sorry, mothers everywhere. All right. But number one, Rob, you got any idea? Will knows.
Gosh, I'm sure it's Linda McMahon getting slapped or something.
Well, it's just the memorable mother. Look, it's just Linda McMahon.
Yeah, okay.
Look at her.
Yeah.
Now, the controversial aspect is some people think that based on her acting ability that Linda is actually a robot that was created by Vince McMahon so that he can pretend he has a family. But for a time, if people remember, during the Attitude Era, which we've got a picture of right up there, Linda was seen as like the only sane McMahon for a little while. She was the voice of reason. She stepped in when Vince became too worryingly tyrannical. And Shane and Stephanie were like endlessly, they just like bickered and switched sides back and forth. But, I don't know that anybody ever got really excited to see Linda on TV. She wasn't like the most charismatic McMahon by any means. But she often, for a while there, was like the chance that the baby faces were going to have it up against the evil McMahons. But anyway, ever the dutiful wife of mother, Linda has somehow remained married to Vince, despite the ridiculous plot where she suffered a nervous breakdown and ended up in a medically induced trance while Vince made out with Trish Stratus in front of her. Eventually, Linda left the WWE, though, and in an official capacity, at least. And she ran for U.S. Senate, losing, I think, each time she ran. Anyway, but now she's the head of Super PAC, I believe, or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And so she's got her own political aspirations. She's doing her own thing, but she was a big part of the WWE as a member of the McMahon family. So there it is, Linda McMahon, the number one memorable mother, and that actually feels fitting. That seems okay. Good. Glad you guys agree with me. And Patrick Griffin says Jim Cornette's mama should be number one.
You know, at the head of a pro wrestling empire, Linda McMahon is a capable matriarch to that family. I think that she's best when she does that, and is worse when she plays a role, you know, in the ring, because she is an able businesswoman, very savvy mind. Again, she's been involved. She served in President Trump's cabinet. Again, she's been active politically. She's a very charitable person, but you know, when she's involved as a personality, I think that's probably her least favorable look, as it were.
Could have said it better myself. Now listen, I've got to pee, so I'm gonna go pee real quick. So Rob, we'll
just wait.
Chat.
We'll sit here like we'll be like, dang, man.
Stopping, and I feel like it's just like silence for a minute. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what else.
Me and Will be like, dang, Gary must have had to go number 2 or something.
All right.
He's taking him.
I'm trusting you. Don't burn anything down while I'm gone.
You can trust us, man. You can trust us. He doesn't trust us.
All right, now let's get real. Let's
talk about the real stuff. Rob, tell us about the real top moms of pro wrestling.
Man, there are 3 or 4 storylines that, and not even necessarily storylines. I mean, you think about in the history of wrestling, things that even weren't storylines but the public knowledge of them echoed or reverberated into the wrestling ring. And I think about like Ric Flair with between Beth and Leslie Flair, and eventually how, even though Leslie and Beth had marginal roles on the screen, how that, you know, the suggestion of, you know, children coming from different marriages led to on-screen animosity between Reed and David Flair and the Flair daughters. It was very natural. It wasn't necessarily scripted. It seemed like a natural progression that you might see in any kind of prize fighting, you know, where this plays off, and how do you account for the, you know, the fact that that the Flair girls and David don't see eye to eye, or that kind of thing. And it's a simple feature of the fact that you're talking about the children of Leslie and Beth Flair, you know, and so I think that's an appropriate storyline. Obviously, I've said it. This is one of the ones I was thinking of when I mentioned the top 3. Jim Cornette for years was able to put his mama over, and we never saw her, not once. She was always a fixture. She added to his persona as the mama's boy, you know, and she hired, you know, Jim Cornette. It was Jim Cornette that hired Mr. Hughes and you know, his bodyguards and this and that. And Jim Cornette was always thoughtful about how his mama was going to apprehend what he was doing and her concerns for him and that kind of thing. And for years throughout the mid 80s, Mama Cornette was very much a part of the narrative, even though we never once saw her, not one time. Yep. You know, and so there you got a feature where you're not reduced to, you know, rubber hands and you know, people doing unrealistic things like giving mamas pile drivers in the ring or that kind of thing that just is not believable. You know, in the 80s, when I saw Jim Cornette talk about his mama, I believed it. Like I believed it like I believe my mom was real. You know what I mean?
And it's one of those things too that's like, as an NWA fan, that's how the Mama Storm thing felt, you know, because it was just part of Tim's narrative of who he is as an athlete, a competitor, you know, that he's the honorable guy, man. I mean, he is fueled by a love for his mama. You know, we can relate to that. All of us can relate to that. And it's one of those things that, you know, and that's, I see, you know, where Gary's coming from with, you know, you throw Danny Deals in a wig into the mix and it gets a little convoluted. But I mean, that's another example though, just in line with what you're talking about with Cornette, where it's just, hey, you know, the mom is an important part of a character's development, of, you know, your love for a competitor. And get it together, Gary. Where are you going to go? You going to go down there? You going to go?
Well, you know what happened was I started to put myself up there in the normal spot, but I was like, does it seem rude that I just came in and I'm like, now I'm up here? And so I was like, maybe I'll just stay down.
I don't mind being the foundation.
That's true.
Cornerstone.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. I don't mind being over here on the right.
I didn't mean to interrupt you guys' conversation.
Y'all got the flanks, man. Y'all got the flanks. Now, just to recap real quick, Gary, we pointed out some of the ways that mothers have played in that have not necessarily occupied screen time. Like we get the animosity between Reed and David Flair, going back to the fact that they're from different mothers. Leslie and Beth Flair. And although they do appear on screen, it's only in the most marginal of capacities. But this adds to a very credible family strife and struggle within the Flair family. And then we talked about Jim Cornette, who for years was, Jim Cornette, he was a mama's boy. And whether he had Mr. Hughes, or I can't remember what was Big Boss Man's character when he was his bodyguard. He had a number of bodyguards during the Crockett days that Mama Cornette hired to defend him, but we never see her on screen once. It just fed into the notion that Jim Cornette was this privileged, pampered mommy's boy who wasn't going to be able to make it with the big dogs, and it just added to like why we hated him so much. And then Will pointed out that the flip side of that is you get, Big Bubba Rogers. Thank you, Patrick Griffin. Big Bubba. Tim Storm is the opposite side of that coin, where Tim Storm is the all-American hero, right? He's not appealing to mama for security or help. He's fighting for things that we all honor, like apple pie, like the American ideal, our mothers, and he does what he does because he loves mom. And then Danny Dills, it was an unlikable skit, but really, when have we seen Mama Storm? We've seen her during Carneyland when she gave a great interview, and that's pretty much it. She's not been drawn in. Every time that she's been drawn in, it's been Danny Dills parroting Mama Storm to get under Tim Storm's skin. And then when Tim Storm exacts judgment on Danny Dills, it makes it all that much more worthwhile. You know what I mean? But for me,
wasn't that Danny Dills was being a dick about it. It was that everybody else acted like it was Mama Storm, and Tim Storm was the only person that was like, "What is happening?" Like Joe Galley and David Marquez.
It's because Gary,
Mama Storm, and like somebody let her into the building. Somebody brought her in. She made it past security. She got in, and it was just like, "I'm Tim Storm's mama," and everybody was like, "Oh, it's obviously Tim Storm's mama."
But Gary's over there going like, is it though? Because they're acting like it is. Is it? I don't know what to believe.
I was just like, no, everybody in the company is betraying Tim Storm right now. Somebody up in the booth at the time with Lagana and Corgan was like, oh yeah, Galley, that's Tim Storm's mama. That's who that is.
And this was before we do have to mention, this was before the incredible interview with the actual Mama Storm from Carneyland earlier in the year in 2020, which was awesome, which was heartwarming for everyone that got to see that. That was one of the highlights of NWA post COVID was definitely that Mama Storm interview on Carneyland. That was really cool.
To Rob's point, the reason that Mama Storm works is because she, like he said, he's appealing to like a different side of humanity, the part we can all relate to. I mean, when he tells the story about her working extra just to pay the bills, and she didn't give up. It was worth it, and that sort of thing, and that's what inspires him and keeps him going. That's all stuff you feel it inside if you've got a soul, and so that's different. By the way, in any kind of athletic competition, most importantly, probably in a combat sport, that's probably the only time the mama should be involved. Is like a person, a son or daughter that's just not giving up because they've had a good influence from their parent. So, less ridiculous than Judy Bagwell.
Right. Well, then we have a couple more stories. We have the Jim Crockett Senior Memorial Cup, where the wife of Jim Crockett Sr., Mrs. Crockett, and therefore the mother of Jim Crockett Jr., comes out to present the $1 million check to the Road Warriors. And then in subsequent years to the following teams that won that, that's an honorable representation of a mother as a matriarch of a promotion coming out. We see lots of honorable representations. We see obviously the incomparable Mickie James and her role as the queen of that family of wrestling royalty, the mother of Donovan Aldis and the wife of Nick Aldis. But probably my favorite of all mother stories in the history of wrestling has to be the story of Marion Allen, who in May of 1986 accompanied her son to a contract signing. This was a contract signing for a title match. Marion Allen, of course, is the mother of Terry Allen, who you may know as Magnum TA. And the contract signing was against Nikita Koloff. Now, why was Marion Allen there? It wasn't because she needed to be there. It's because he needed a witness to the contract signing, and that's who he had to support him. Nikita had his uncle there, Ivan. Magnum TA had his mother there, Marion. And at that contract signing, Nikita Koloff makes it a point to insult Magnum, saying in Russia, women know their place. They're out there doing this. They serve their men. But here, she's out here in fun. What are you, some kind of mama's boy or something? You can't speak for yourself. And in retaliation, in defending his mother's honor and his own honor, Magnum TA leaps across the table, begins to pummel Nikita Koloff, and in the process, Bob Geigel, the NWA president, gets roughed up. It was very believable. At the time, I entirely believed it. I still believe it, And as a result of that encounter, Magnum TA was stripped of the U.S. champion. Now, this is at Magnum TA's height. He was the heir apparent to the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Some might consider the greatest NWA World's Champion of all time, up there with Lou Thesz, Dory Funk Jr., and perhaps Nick Aldis. He was at that pinnacle. He held that championship that made him the number one contender. And Nikita Koloff was the threat. This was in the height of the Cold War. He was the Russian Nightmare, challenging the All-American champion, the U.S. champion, Magnum TA. And as a result of that encounter, Magnum TA is stripped of the championship, and it's held up. And the way that this is determined is in one of the most legendary series of matches, a series of matches that presaged several other series, like the 7 Levels of Hate for the NWA title later on between Adam Pearce and Colt Cabana. I mean, the mythology just pervades the history of the sport. And as it turns out, you guys can go watch these matches. Nikita Koloff, the scourge of America, would go on to win that championship. But in another heartwarming story, at the end of this series, in the real world, Mandy Koloff, the wife of Nikita Koloff, passes away tragically through Hodgkin's disease, and this becomes the catalyst for Nikita Koloff making that a very emotional turn, that change of philosophy to become Magnum TA's greatest ally and the ally of Dusty Rhodes. And later on, Nikita goes on to remarry and has 2 beautiful daughters of his own. They're featured in Preacher's Daughters, I think, a series that was on A&E or something like that. But anyway, this involvement of Marion Allen, to me, is the greatest, most appropriate involvement ever of a mother in pro wrestling history. That's my 2 cents. I'm just the doc. I'm taking house calls all week.
I actually that appeals to me, but I'm being straight up. I don't know that storyline very well. Like I don't, like I just highlights of it. What you're saying. I mean, I'm aware of it, but I didn't watch it like you did, and it makes me want to go back and get into that. It's pretty interesting. Like it sounds like a fun.
So you got to imagine a man like Goliath putting that list together. He's obviously knowledgeable about the sport. Why would that story not make the top 10? That's what I'm wondering. Like, to me, that's number one. Why does that not crack the top 10?
I think with time, things are lost. That's one of the things. I mean, and I'm not saying it's like completely lost. I mean, I just mean that this is one of the things. Like, this is one of the things we're trying to do over with our history podcast. It's like to capture this kind of stuff, because as time goes on, I mean, we've even talked about it in our history podcast that there's these stretches of time where it's like, this guy knew this guy, even though they were like technically from two different generations of pro wrestling. And like, I guess what I'm saying is, it's just like, as time goes on, this kind of history just starts happening faster. Things are going to start like popping up quicker. Like if that makes sense, just like with technology, like once it starts evolving, everything starts evolving faster and faster. Technology just like blows up. And it's the same with like pro wrestling history. It feels like now there's so much. There's just so much to take in, so much to consume. And like, you gotta educate yourself on the highlights of it and stuff. But I think modern fans, for a lot of people just coming in, it's tough to know about what highlights they should go back and check out. I love that you highlighted our old.
Thanks, Rob.
Good to know where Rob's head's actually at.
Yeah. While Gary was reacting.
Your Atlanta Braves are now playing 500 baseball, baby. Back on top.
Back on top.
Anyway, I'm just saying, this is why we got you, Doc, is to remind people of this exact kind of stuff. This is what you bring to the table, these storylines. And what's going to be really important is, as we go, as more crap happens in pro wrestling, these actual good storylines need to be preserved. They need to be told. They need to be passed down, and not be like me and continue the legacy of Mae Young giving birth to a rubber hand. But I'm sorry, whether you like it or not, that's also getting passed down. And, that's going to be part of the discussion at some point. But we need to make sure that even though when we have fun with, dude, it's like, we're talking about the Attitude Era, and it's like, it's easy to crap on any era of pro wrestling because there was always some stupid stuff happening somewhere. The Attitude Era did have good stuff too. There was legitimate wrestling feuds and fun wrestling happening. It's like if you took AEW right now and you took it from the start till now, and all you wanted to focus on was the exploding barbed wire death match, like that thing. It's like, yeah, that was a bummer that did not pan out well. That's not all AEW's done. Like they've had some legitimately good wrestling matches.
You're right. I'm the last person to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, even on our TikTok, I throw up wrestling history every day, whether it's NWA, AW. On my personal lessons, I tend to highlight the NWA, but there's monumental history in all of them, and there's some very vibrant things going on in the WWE during the Attitude Era. I mean, we've got the rise of Eddie Guerrero, one of the great stories. We've got you got a lot of stuff going on in those days, and I mean, Eddie Guerrero comes in after that, but you got a lot. I mean, the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin as the great heir to the tradition of Hulk Hogan. You got a lot of stuff going on. So I'm not throwing out the baby with it, but when you go back to the days of yore, the days when wrestling really was great, and you look at storylines that were dumb today, they seem plausible to me. For example, Like tomorrow is May the 10th. That is the day that Vern Gagne retires as the AWA champion. He held the title for 4,667 days or something like that over the course of 10 reigns. The second longest reigning champion was Nick Bockwinkel. How does he go out? He beats Nick Bockwinkel, and then he retires a champion. 10 days later, they put the belt on Bockwinkel as the number one contender. That was scandalous. In those days, that was like, hey, you don't just put the belt on somebody. That was what stretched the imagination back then. We've gone from you crowning a champion without a tournament, without trying to establish linealness in those days, to now we got rubber gloves coming out of women's vaginas, or their birth canals. That's
I gotta say, to be fair, that's not happening now.
No, it's not.
I think we like peaked out at the Jerry Springer-esque type stuff, and we've slowly I'd like to think we've reeled it in a little bit.
We have reeled it in, but we still have people being immolated in the ring, set on fire, as though that's believable.
That's a good point.
And so it's not like the plausibility factor has not been reined back in. Maybe it's a little more tasteful, if you want to call immolation more tasteful, which I guess it is. I mean, I think there's more of an honor to that, but sadly it is. But it's not like in there. It's not the same, Gary. I mean, what we considered questionable back in those days, and I see Ricky Dona mention Larry Zbyszko. Larry Zbyszko going on week after week, refusing to defend the title, or Ric Flair getting himself purposely disqualified. That was ridiculous in those days. Now, every once in a while, you did have RoboCop show up, but that was the exception to the rule. Now it's like everything is like, setting on fire match. People are dematerializing in the ring. I mean, it's like, nah, man, it's not the same. But where it is going on, where the lifeblood of wrestling is, it's in Ring of Honor, it's in Mission Pro, it's in TNA, it's in NXT, it's in MPW, it's in most perfectly the NWA. And so the sport's not dead. It's the life is there. It's just those big time proponents of the sport are really, just rehashing implausibility and just shoving it down people's throats. And it's just, it's a far cry from where the sport used to be.
I guess I kind of was thinking that I see what you're saying. And so like the ridiculousness has taken the driver's seat right now.
We're normalizing ridiculousness, normalizing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I think my point was going to be, it's like, oh no, good stuff still exists, but it does. But you're right, it's not accepted. I mean, it's the reason you've got like a guy like, I don't know, 10 years into his career in WWE, Cesaro's finally being recognized as like a competitor in WWE apparently, and not like a joke figure. It's like, this dude's been fantastic the entire time. Like, he could have had a 10-year run as a legitimate competitor. Just now, after you've run out of everything else to put him in, you're like, oh yeah, he's actually a really good wrestler. We should, try to use him as such. And
right.
Yeah, it's weird, but that's the trouble, man. It's like WWE got this spot. Sorry, mothers. Somehow we got into this whole discussion, but WWE got into this spot of being the top company, and so they are the definition of what pro wrestling is, apparently, or at least for I guess mainstream audiences, but it's far from the only thing that exists. Like, there's so much good wrestling out there. There's something for everybody, literally. Whatever you want, there's something out there for you. And I'm, obviously we are on the exact same page that NWA perfectly encapsulates it. And I was not trying to rip off Front Row here, who in the chat is saying we live in an incredible time in pro wrestling where there's so much good stuff out there and something for every taste. No, it's just also that Front Row and I also see eye to eye on a lot of things. I don't even want to hate on WWE because I know that they have legitimately good wrestlers. They have some good stuff going on. Like Roman Reigns is legitimately one of the best heels in the business right now. And he should have probably had been for the past 5 years, but luckily he's finally there. But No, that guy's great. And so they got good stuff. They have good wrestlers, but they also continuously miscast people. And it's weird with them too, because sorry if I'm, I broke out the whiskey, so apologize if I'm running on a tangent. But you mentioned Eddie Guerrero earlier, and it got me thinking about, for some reason, my mind started spinning about, also weird is that they went so long with Hulk Hogan being the top dude. And it was like, and then it was like the Attitude Era where you got characters that actually captured people's imaginations, like The Rock and Stone Cold and that sort of thing. But women were objects. Women were bikini babes and like, let's do bra and panties matches. They finally evolved it somewhere in there. At a certain point where Japanese style, lucha libre, like all these other styles weren't welcome in WWE. And all of a sudden, eventually, there was this segment of time where there was this, what were they, the SmackDown 7 or something, I think is what they called them. And it was like Edge and Angle and Benoit and Guerrero and Mysterio. And like, they were like, this is the best wrestling you can find in the world anywhere, is right here on SmackDown. And it's these guys having every freaking week outstanding matchups. And then the women started coming along. And then the women were coming up. And they got like where they are sort of getting into like the Sasha Banks and the Becky Lynch and the Charlotte Flairs and the lead up into that Mania where Becky and Ronda Rousey could have main evented, and then all of a sudden, somehow, somewhere, it feels like it like took a step back. I don't know. It's weird with WWE right now. I don't know what's happening with them. I realized that was a tangent. I apologize, but it's just
you're spot on, man. It's inconsistent, and that's one of my things with WWE, and you guys are exactly right. Like, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's good stuff there. I mean, I watched both nights of WrestleMania this past month, and man, there was some great pro wrestling moments in that. I mean, returning to live crowds, that scale. I mean, regardless of where you sit on whether or not that was smart or the best decision, I mean, it was still just cool to have some of those moments. And yeah, there was low moments where you're just like, that doesn't make sense. This is insane. And it's like the inconsistency of it. And, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why we've landed on, focusing on a wrestling promotion like the NWA, because, while there's stuff that happens that's not our favorite thing, we're talking about Danny Deals wearing a wig and pretending to be Mama Storm and everybody, selling it. There's still more consistency across the board. And the same thing is true for the promotions Rob mentioned, the Ring of Honors, the, stuff like that, where it's like there is, and I love Rob's, use of the word plausibility. Like, there's a plausibility to it. I mean, because at the end of the day, we're in this because we're fans of prize fight pro wrestling, and so when you have, it's like whiplash in WWE, and I get that they're more concerned about entertainment and that they want to have something for everyone. I get that. I can appreciate that. But at the same time, you're going to alienate a lot of your audience, because it's like the ones that appreciate the prize fight aspect of Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley are not going to appreciate the Fiend and this giant Jack in the Box and Alexa Bliss with some black oil running down. I don't know what was happening in that match. You know what I mean? So it's like you're kind of willingly like giving everybody something and pleasing no one almost. Does that make sense? Like, I just don't think there's a lot of overlap in those types of fans. So, I mean, I work in marketing, and so I look at things from that perspective, and I'm like, okay, I can understand trying to make everyone happy, but that's kind of a stupid goal. You do better if you pick a target audience and you make them happy and create loyal ambassadors out of them. And so, yeah, WWE's got a ton of fans because they've been around for years, and there's some people that'll just watch it no matter what, and they'll laugh at the stuff that doesn't make sense, but they'll keep watching, and, I guess that's working for them. I mean, you look at their revenue, and I guess something's working out for them, but, it's just not for everybody.
If I could say something really quick too. Like I see in the chat, like people talking about Ring of Honor. I see James H. Jackson Jr. saying Ring of Honor is my favorite show overall. Mark's review. So, hey, Mark, good to see you, buddy. ROH is great. I love their Pure division. And Ricky Donna throwing in here, I think NJPW, ROH, and NWA are the top 3 promotions. I actually probably like fully agree with that. But I don't think there is a perfect promotion right now. Like, I mean, people want to crap on the NWA for anything that's inconsistent or AEW or whatever. I think everybody's got their things. It's a weird balance. Like with Ring of Honor, if I could speak on them for just a second, I mean, I freaking love Ring of Honor. Like, I love their Pure division, just like you guys do. I think it's fantastic. Do I think that the Pure division is actually the only thing they need to do and they would like succeed just with that? I don't know. I don't think they would, because I think that there is something to be said too for getting invested with characters, and Ring of Honor has like they're really good at wrestling, and they've stepped it up during the pandemic that they have those like what we often refer to as like the 10 pounds of gold segments before each match leading into it. So I gotta give props there, because I think the NWA started that, but that's just me. But anyway, they do these like segments leading up to the match, and that's very good. That's all like UFC style stuff. But eventually that can get samesies. Like if it's just like you can't distinguish the competitors. Like you can't find like specific things to latch onto that you love about them. And I'm not saying they suck. I'll take that over the Fiend burning in the middle of the ring any day of the week. I'm just saying that's another thing that they've got to consider, is that Ring of Honor is great, but you can't also just get by on there's like a balance with pro wrestling. It's a unique thing.
I think there's always if you're into strictly just prize fighting, then like, there's UFC and boxing. I mean, wrestling, professional wrestling has to have that added layer of character development, storylines, things to grab your attention. I just think there's a fine line between like creating a compelling story and like some kind of fantasy fiction, like thing, you know what I mean? There's a fine line there. And I think that's what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I agree with everything you're saying. Gary, when you're talking about, you don't think there's a perfect promotion, but I agree, but I don't think anyone's looking for a perfect promotion. I think that's like arguing against a point that nobody's making. It's not, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, we got a lot of good promotions out there, and then you can kind of orient where good's at, and you got good and bad, or more appealing and less appealing features of each. And you just can't find the good promotion until you line up every story that represents what you're going through, what appeals to you personally as a human being. But I think, so to Will's point, I think obviously in wrestling, and to a degree in UFC and boxing, you do have narrative there too. I mean, I think that's part of being, in simulated combat sports, but that's just it. Wrestling is simulated combat sports. And when we go into, the Marvel live action universe, where complete human plausibility is suspended, then we're getting away from the sport aspect and more into comic book and caricature. And there is, don't get me wrong, there is an audience for that. I'm not saying that that's terrible either. I'm just saying, for me and for the audience that we appeal to, for the people, for the lost fan that's drawn back to the NWA and to Ring of Honor, that's what we're missing today. And that's where we're getting our thirst quenched by these promotions, because the WWE and AEW are going to do this. They're going to serve a lot of really great wrestling content, a lot of like implausible story stuff that might be great for some audiences and for kids and stuff like that. But for those of us who thirst after Lou Thez and Vern Gagne and Nick Bockwinkel and Ric Flair and Dory Funk Jr. and Nick Aldis and we're going to find it in these promotions. This is where our flavor's at. So I'm not here to say that one's better than the other as though I'm the authority on it. I'm just saying when it comes to what we have traditionally embraced as the sport of pro wrestling, what the NWA and Ring of Honor is doing, and to some extent NXT, what they are doing is much more related, or has a closer kinship to pure wrestling. And I don't mean to create a pun there with what you were saying, Gary, but to pure old school prize fight wrestling, the wrestling that's rooted in George Hackenschmidt and William Flagg. That's what I'm talking about.
Well,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And I guess I should clarify that when I was talking about Ring of Honor, I did not mean to click on that again, Ricky Donna. I don't even know where that comment is. All right, found it. I guess what I was trying to say wasn't I wasn't trying to pick on Ring of Honor for like not being perfect and there needs to be a perfect promotion so much as I was just saying that like nobody is perfect. And I think that was my actual point. Is just like there's different things that people could do better. I haven't seen a perfect promotion, and I don't think that anybody's arguing that there are. But I guess maybe deep inside, I felt like I was piling on WWE for too long, and I was like, all right, well, I see Ring of Honor mentioned over and over again. Let me tell you what I think about Ring of Honor real quick, and some faults I find, like, or the concerns I have for like what they do as well, just as a wrestling fan. But to what you're saying too, another point you brought up there when you brought up the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I actually had this point. And I know everybody's busy, so everybody can't be a part of the Discord and have this conversation. But I brought this point up the other day about I finally got to watch AEW from this past week where they did the Blood and Guts show, and MJF and Chris Jericho were on the cage, and MJF pushed Chris Jericho off the cage, and Chris Jericho landed onto a table that was clearly padded underneath the stunt crash pad. And so there was this whole debate online where people were like, this is BS, like it's a crash pad, and this is, like, and then people being like, well, what do you want him to do? You want to kill himself? Like he's falling through concrete, like, like what do you want to see? Like blah, 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 blah. And my point in the Discord was, I was like, it actually got me thinking when I watched it, I was like, even with AEW, I'm like, first of all, they shot it at a silly angle. I don't know why they shot it at the angle that they did, that you could clearly see there's a crash pad there. Like, if you're going to do it, like, don't shoot it so that you see there's clearly a crash pad. But also, I was thinking, like, my type of pro wrestling is there's not that scenario in the first place. Like, that's not what would happen.
That's it.
And so it's like, if your idea of pro wrestling is that you're supposed to suspend your disbelief, it's like everybody's chasing that high of Mick Foley falling off the top of the Hell in the Cell. But I'm like, you're never going to get that because Mick Foley freaking flew off the top of the Hell in the Cell, and there was nothing to catch him except a wooden table. And, it didn't really catch him very well. And it's like, and you can't do that anymore. And they realized that eventually. They're like, we got to dial it back, or try to. And, but it's like
you can get away with that once a generation. Jimmy Snuka did it, in that match, and then of course Mick Foley very well could have died doing that. Very well could have died.
100%.
He lost teeth. So but then we get into this contrivedness about it. It's like, come on, dog. Obviously, I don't want. To your point, I don't want Jericho. I think Jericho is one of the greats, and he's pouring his heart out for the business in the best capacity that he can right now in the company that he's in and what they're requiring of him. But like you said, Gary, in the kind of wrestling that we like, that doesn't happen in the first place. Maybe once every 20 years it doesn't, and people talk about it until they're on their deathbed. They talk about it, But yeah.
It's tough. It's tough because, it puts you in a scenario where there's the people. It already feels like, for me, that the debate became like, oh, what should they have shown? What shouldn't they have shown? Like, what should, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all right, well, anytime somebody asks me, like, how you like wrestling, it's not real. And my go-to argument is like, yeah, well, neither is place your TV show or movie here. Like, the Avengers isn't real or whatever. And it's like, but you suspend your disbelief. You accept the rules of that situation. Professional wrestling always is supposed to be simulated combat sport. And the idea that they work themselves on top of the cage and MJF is just going to throw Chris Jericho off to his death, like, or whatever, it's just like, man, maybe this isn't, I don't know. Like it just feels like to me, like maybe this isn't the situation you even go for. There's other ways to get the same emotional reaction that you're hoping for, because what ends up in that match, for those who haven't seen it, is like MJF's like threatening to throw Jericho off, and the Inner Circle surrenders to get him to not do it. Then he throws Chris Jericho off the side of the cage. But I feel like you could get that from something else. Steel chair shot or something villainous that you don't have to go like that insane with it.
Man, there was a time in this sport when you use a steel chair in a match, there were going to be fines, investigations, and suspensions. It was a big deal. It was like a big deal. And man, I 100% agree with you. Marvel Universe is the suspension of disbelief. I've seen this brought up so many times in conversations about pro wrestling about, well, that's not real. Well, neither is Marvel, but you watch it. The thing is that Marvel is Marvel, though. Marvel is not sappy chick flicks. Marvel is not old 80s Westerns, although it's close to that. Marvel is Marvel. It is a genre, and pro wrestling is a genre. It is a genre. And it's getting so big that it's branching out and genres are being confused here, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's not a moral problem with that. It's not, unless we get into some of the ridiculous like Mother's Day storylines we were talking about early. That's fine. There are people with taste for that. I'm just saying that as far as I'm concerned, wrestling is at its best when it's less people believing, man, was that real? I mean, is that, golly, when the Four Horsemen, when Ole and Arn Anderson attacked Dusty Rhodes after Dusty Rhodes intervened to save Ric Flair from Nikita and Ivan Koloff, it took them an hour to get out of the cage. You know why? Because 100 fans surrounded the ring and wouldn't let them out. It took them an hour to get out. People believed it, And this is not a call for like poor security, but it's a call for more believability. You're not going to see people surround the ring like that in a WWE show. No one really believed that the Fiend was consumed by flames and he's gone. Maybe a 2-year-old did, or a 6-year-old, but if they're allowed to watch that. But
that's the tough part is like exactly what you're saying is like Marvel is its own genre, and when you want to try to compare, and if you're like, well, Marvel's not real, and you suspend your disbelief for that. But yeah, that's a different universe. That's a different world. This is this genre, and this is supposed to be combat sports. These guys competing for belts. Belts are important. You want to be the best. You want to be the champion. You want to, that sort of thing. At no point should you be questioning, like, did this guy decide he's also a murderer, like on live television? Like,
why in the world does Fight TV have Nick Aldis come on to offer analysis on Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. unless they believe or trying to make the case that what we're talking about, the insight we're getting is the insight of a prize fighter, not a superhero, not a comic book star, but a prize fighter who plies his craft in the ring under gentlemen's rules for the sake of a championship. That's what I'm talking. And that is just my preference. It's just my preference, but I think it's a preference that's rooted in history.
Yeah. And I'll say like, it also affects, as I was talking about earlier about even like WrestleMania was a great show, but like when you muddy the waters here and there, you end up muddying the waters across the board. And so you mentioned, and like, I remember growing up, man, like having those moments, like you mentioned with Nikita and Magnum TA, where like, I was like, dude, that's real. They hate each other. They need security in there. Like, this is an assault. Like, this is a real thing. This isn't like simulated. And the reason you don't have that is because the waters get muddied. And so it's like I could think of modern day examples of this for me personally, even as a grown man watching professional wrestling. When I, watch, like I said earlier, Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre, never for a moment did I think like, oh, these guys really hate each other. Like, really. And I should really like have some genuine investment in this match. For me, it was like, oh man, I want to see where this goes. from just same way as when I'm watching a movie. But when I was watching Ring of Honor regularly, I was kind of having different feelings. I mean, seeing, guys like Vincent and Mike Bennett and Matt Taven having their kind of fallout and knowing the history that those guys have, and them tapping into the realism of like, this guy was in his wedding. You know what I mean? Like, there were moments where I was kind of like, oh man, like, you know what I mean? Where it wasn't hard for me to like really accept this as like a thing that was really happening that is actual prize fighting. You know what I mean? And so that's just the difference in, because Ring of Honor is also not asking me to believe that a guy is getting burned alive, and is also not asking me to believe that then he comes back from the dead. And, they're not asking me to believe all this other stuff. So it's like I'm in a different mindset when I'm watching that. It's the same way, obviously, with the NWA, where, everything we see, like, is plausible. Like, it makes sense, from every perspective. And I mean, yeah, it's not perfect. And there's no, to Gary's point, there's no perfect wrestling promotion, but there are those that it does make it a lot easier for you to buy into what's happening and actually get invested in it and have that same emotional reaction without having to burn somebody alive or without having to throw somebody off of a giant steel cage.
Let me say something really quick, bringing the chat into it. Sorry, Doc. I just want to throw this in there. Bringing the chat into it, I just want to point something out that to what I'm trying to say too is like Front Row's here saying, I feel like there were a number of production fails during Blood and Guts that took away from the great in-ring action, capturing Jericho blading on camera, for example, and Ricky Donna pointing out they keep blaming the AEW wrestlers for those types of botches, but it's a production mistake. And James H. Jackson Jr. said Jericho can't control what the camera is when he's in the match. And he says, I'm going to spin this around and say that Jericho, as the regional, should always know where the main camera is at all times. Front Row says Jericho's a 30-year pro, needs to know how to work around the camera, but the camera has to be in the right spots for him to do that. It's 100% production issues. And my point is that none of that should be the conversation coming out of that show.
Boom.
It's like not one bit of it.
You shouldn't have to do that.
It should have been MJF just did the most despicable shit you've ever seen in a pro wrestling show, and I hate him. And he is the worst person that ever existed in the pro wrestling industry. He should be fired. He should be fined, suspended, whatever you got to do. Somebody should step up. MJF is a piece of crap for what he did to Chris Jericho. That is not the discussion. The discussion is, what should production have done? Should you have shot it this way? Should you have shot it this way? And it's like, that's all missing pro wrestling. That's what drives me nuts. It's like, no, MJF just effed over everybody. And he just screwed Jericho, and he just injured Jericho on purpose. And it's like, that should be the freaking point. It's like, but none of that is the discussion.
And here's my other kind of beef with this whole conversation is that, in my opinion, wrestling is a spectator sport that happens to be televised, not the other way around, not a television program that you can go watch live. I know that because of the lucrativeness of TV deals and stuff like that, that's how it's viewed nowadays. But wrestling at its core, all those storylines that Rob just mentioned, those were created for a live crowd, and they just had a couple of cameras to capture it so that other people could watch too, so that the audience could be larger. And nowadays we have that flipped. It's like, we're going to create a TV production, we're going to create a movie, and we're going to sell tickets to it. Because if you're relying on a camera angle to sell something that happens, what about everyone in that crowd? They're just seeing it from where they are. Do you think they're not walking away going, wow, that was dumb? So, to your point, if you're relying on camera angles being perfect and things going off technically without a hitch, are you putting together a great wrestling show?
And just let me say too, just for you guys in the chat, that's not me crapping on you. I'm just pointing out that's the discussion I see. And my roundabout point is that should not be the discussion, and it's not your fault. It's the discussion. It's their fault. It's the discussion. Why did you create a scenario where that could possibly be the discussion? It's that's AEW. And I'm not trying to crap on AEW. This is WWE. This is a lot of different promotions. I'm just saying, like, why you got to do that? Why you got to try to be so over the top? Why you got to be Fast and the Furious? You're not Fast and the Furious. If you want Fast and the Furious, you can go watch Fast and the Furious movies. Like, why do you need to have a stunt show? You're supposed to be a pro wrestling show. And so now you've turned it into something else where this is the kind of discussion that's happening, and that doesn't have to be the case.
I mean, you think of like how good the NWA does this, man. How good have they consistently done this from the Lightning One iteration all the way back to the days of Crockett and even before that? We think about Dusty Rhodes being followed to the Crockett offices by the Four Horsemen and being jumped in the parking lot. What many of you might not know is that they nearly took out warrants on Arn, Ole Anderson, and Tully Blanchard for that. Like, for real. They nearly took out warrants on that because it was so believable. Like, they thought he had just gotten assaulted in the parking lot, okay? That was the crazy event that happened. That was how much your belief had to be suspended. Not much. When you look at the prior to the pandemic shutdowns, the most, like, remarkable topic in the NWA, in power and so forth, and you might have a different perspective on this, but for me, like, the biggest story was Nick Aldis showing up with the belt at Ring of Honor. Like, oh my gosh, like, that is a big story, and that's a believable story, and nobody has to be in on that on that story. To me, that is like big time. He's showing up with the belt to make a statement at Ring of Honor, to proclaim himself as the king of wrestling. And that, you know, to me, that when you know, the NWA asks a lot of us. It asks a lot of our attention. It asks us to buy into the Greek myth and to be intelligent and to follow a story. But it doesn't ask us to suspend, like, reality when it comes to its narratives.
Don't tell me it doesn't work. We still get into arguments weekly on Camille freaking spearing Tim Storm. Don't tell me it doesn't work. That still pisses me off. You don't F with Tim Storm. That man is a good man and a hard worker.
There they go. There they go. That's day one. Rocky Marciano.
Nobody had to fly through the top of the building or, like, become Iron Man or any of that crap. I just care about Tim Storm, and you don't F him over. And that's what it's supposed to be.
That might actually be the biggest story. I wasn't thinking about that. When you think of, like, all the showing up, probably the one story that eclipses that is that. And that is believable. It can happen. Have you guys seen Camille in life? She's of the, you know, she's the real deal, man. That she's capable of putting a hurt on somebody, you know?
Yeah. Well, my point is, even on a smaller level, like, you know, the stuff you're talking about, these are big stories, these are headlines, which in a lot of ways you do have to thrive in the wrestling world. But even on a smaller scale, I mean, we had the privilege of being there, you know, for this last round of tapings, and I was able to be there for the live Back for the Attack show in the studio. It was my first time in the studio. It was an incredible moment that I got to share with you guys. And nothing transpired on screen that didn't transpire live. So what I mean is, like, when I went back and watched the show that broadcast on Fight TV, there was nothing different about, like because I was there live, I didn't see anything more. Does that make sense? Like, and I know that might sound counterintuitive. You want people to go live, but the point is, like, I didn't get like a behind the scenes peek because I saw somebody climb out from under the ring, or I saw them setting up for an angle or something like that. It was the same. I saw the same show sitting in the studio that you guys saw watching on Fight TV. And that's how wrestling should be. And that's how it was. And that's how it was, you know, back in the day. I mean, when you went to a wrestling show, it was just you getting to see live what was going to happen, what was happening. So, That's my point. And I can't say the same for the WWE or the AEW shows that I've been to live. Great shows, great experiences. Rob, you there? But
I wasn't trying to step on what you're saying, Will.
No, but there's always something. There's always some random thing where you're like, oh yeah, I saw them setting up for that, or it was obvious they were going to do this, or something like that.
Ron Gibson threw up in the chat, which is what I threw if you're listening to this later on the podcast version. He said, I threw up the chat and it's blocking Rob's face, so I apologize. But Ron Gibson says, as for fantastical character development stories, though, I have to admit, when Josephus and the spiritual advisor showed up at Tim Storm's daughter's house, I gasped. I believed in that moment. And my point is that's you're talking about fantastical character development stories, but that's fantastical based in reality. Like Josephus lived that stuff. With Josephus, God bless Joseph Hudson, because that guy, when he was the question mark, he was the question mark. He never was not the question mark. Ask anybody he worked with. Ask those of us who got to see him in person live at the signing table, the merch booths, everything. Question mark was question mark. Question mark never took a second to say hey, what's up? Let's that guy believed in it. Next week's interview, or the coming week's interview, is going to be with Matthew Mims. And he's an NWA. He's a newbie, but he's been there since day one, first match. He's been there. But he will straight up tell you a story of working independently with Josephus. When Josephus was wrestling against Josephus Brody, we get into a discussion about Josephus. And the discussion backstage was, you don't look him in the eye. And he had a buddy who looked him in the eye, who didn't know better. And Josephus could not break character and could not break that was the rule, was that you don't look him in the eye, and went after his buddy. And Matthew Mills will tell you that story. Intimidated the hell out of this guy, because it's you're going to respect that I am not the man that you hang out with and you play with. And he's I'll let Matt Mims tell the story on the show, but essentially Josephus was never not on that. You saw him in a wrestling situation. Josephus was always Josephus.
No, that's true. I can speak for that personally. Some of you may know that in the last year, Josephus and myself and my daughters, we became personal acquaintances. We became friends. He says that on a couple of podcasts. I'm not just making this up, but the funny thing is that whenever we corresponded with him, when we corresponded him as question mark, we always talked to question mark. Even though he knew we knew, and we knew that he knew. When we talked to him, we addressed our mail. We always wrote him, and I've got postcards that he sent us upstairs that are sent from Monrovia, and it's as question mark. I mean, it was he never. I mean, I believed it, man. But this is a person that I knew. That was a friend of mine. So
it's weird. I think it sounds weird to people now, or people don't expect that to be there. But he cared about that stuff. And Ron, you mentioned fantastical character development, but I mean, that was based in reality. That's legit. As far as if this guy is this who he is portraying on TV, this is not above what he would do. And it's not he's the Fiend. He's a lunatic cult leader. He's, whatever he is. This is something that person would do. And so that's all still believable. You could accept that. When the Four Horsemen break Dusty Rhodes' arm, it's well, they would probably break Dusty Rhodes' arm. That's not outside of the realm of possibility. This is not setting somebody on fire and killing them in the middle of the ring. We're talking about different things here. This is, I don't know. It's just, I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but the more and more we go along, I get guys like Jim Cornette who hang on, who are so passionate about what wrestling was supposed to be. And maybe Cornette takes it too far. I'm not going to argue that. Maybe he's not open to any other evolving in the sport. But there's a reason for that.
the sport must evolve for sure. We're
It
not
has to
talking about
evolve.
this. It has to evolve, but where is the evolution taking place? The evolution should be like when, people are products of their time, culture, and space. And so when the sport evolves, it's not the sport. I mean, the sport of boxing and the sport of baseball, they've changed, they've evolved with the times. I mean, but if you're watching baseball now, this is my favorite sport, aside from pro wrestling. You can go back into the 1870s and 80s and watch this game and recognize it as the same game you're watching today. It's not necessarily the essential. It's not the essentials that evolve. It's the accidents that evolve. What is essential to the sport remains the same. What's accidental to the sport changes. And what changes is culture, times, trends, perspectives, cultural conflict, those kinds of things. And so, the sport as its sport should remain very familiar to people if it's going to be true to itself. But the personalities and the issues, right now, let me give you a good cinema illustration, Gary, because you do Cinema Shock. I'm always intrigued by
how cinema schlong. I'm impressed.
Well, my students are probably watching at this early hour, so yeah. But
they've said schlong, I promise you.
Anyway, if you look at like Batman, right, and the character of the Joker in its various iterations always takes on the spirit of the age, right? Like in the past, the Joker has been a criminal mastermind, and then he's been this and that. And today, in the latest iteration, in a time where we're very conscious about mental health and so forth, what persona does this Joker take on? He takes on a person that's obviously got mental health issues, and that's his primary struggle. It's not necessarily a problem of organized crime and wanting to, rob banks and this and that and be a mobster. It's, he's got mental health issues. And so the character, the essence of the character is the core is the same. It's the same Joker, but over time we see that the evolution has imbibed the spirit of the age. And I think that's what we're talking about when we need to see the evolution of the sport to keep it relevant. It's not changing the essentials of the sport. It's changing the themes of the sport. What makes it relevant to the current consumer. And I think, again, the brands that do it best, like Ring of Honor and Impact and the NWA and NXT to a degree, I think they do it best. They're imbibing the spirit of the age, but maintaining the essentials of prize fight wrestling.
Well, and Ricky Donna, you're pointing out here, I love Cordy, but I disagree on some of what he says about wrestlers. I'm not saying like I 100% believe in like everything Cordy says, and I also would never speak like Cordy does half the time. But I will say there's a reason those guys hang on to those ideals. There's a reason, because what they're concerned about, the world's become too black and white. I hate to say it, but it feels like everything's just like you're either for this or against this. And generally, by the way, if you tell me I'm either with you or against you, I'm against you. Just side note, because I'm just like, you don't get to do that to me. But the thing is with like what Cornette cares about is like the realism of wrestling, the acceptance of it being a legitimate combat sport. That's what that guy's talking about. And sure, he's unable to accept some current acts in these ways when there is an obvious elevation. I mean, for instance, let's just, again, I don't want to go off on like a huge tangent, but like, it feels like he has a problem with like smaller people, like the people that are going to beat the hell out of somebody. I was like, I feel like when the UFC came around, we learned very quickly that doesn't mean anything. Hoist Gracie is not like the person that you feel like is going to beat you up in the bar 10 out of 10 times. I would have taken Hoist Gracie over Ken Shamrock in a fight. And I'd probably lost both times, but I'd have really lost against Hoist Gracie. Like he would have broken my arms or something and my legs and all of that stuff. And Hoist Gracie was a very tiny man compared to Ken Shamrock. It's like that part doesn't matter. Like you got to get over that. Like Daniel Bryan is a legitimate competitor. Daniel Bryan could tie somebody up. It could happen. And so there's like those aspects I feel like some older guys have a problem wrapping their brain around. But what I do think that they have a problem with that that is legitimate is like there's only so inside you can get before you've gone too far. You're through the what's the word? You're through the not through the looking glass, but the you're so far in it, like you can't come back, and like it's just I think they're worried about that part of it. And there's a thing that separates pro wrestling, and it's a delicate balance between it being pro wrestling and that restaurant Medieval Nights you go to, where you go watch the Knights compete in their competitions and stuff. It's like there's a balance somewhere in there. And so anyway,
I mean, the truth is stranger than fiction. And so when wrestling delves into true human interest stories, it's so compelling. It's much more compelling when they delve than when they pretend to delve into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because the truth is stranger than fiction, man. That's why I love history. That's why I got my degree in history.
100%. If whatever they could do to make you question, like wrestling is at its best when it makes you question, like just what is actually happening. Like, wait a minute, do these two guys hate each other? Well, when I was growing up, my parents used to always say, I remember when I was young, they would say like, "Oh, wrestling's fake. Oh, it's fake." But then my mom would tell me, "Well, it's fake sometimes, but sometimes they get really mad and they start fighting." And it's just like that kept the illusion alive. But that was I feel like a common thing. I don't know, but my parents legitimately believe that. Or like sometimes but sometimes they do fight, like because they're pissed off and they like go at each other. Like you need that like little bit of something in there sometimes. That's why I respect a guy like Nick Aldis, who suffers no fools. It doesn't give a damn what you think about him. And if he doesn't like you on Twitter, he will block you. If you say the wrong thing at any times, you're cut off. Like he doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him because he is Nick Aldis and he is doing Nick Aldis things. And you're either along for the ride or you're not, and he doesn't need you. And you don't have to like that. You don't have to be on board. Like, because that's pro wrestling. That's what it's supposed to be like. And Josephus, same way. Joseph Hudson, God rest his soul. That was a man who believed in, whatever you give me, I'm playing it to the as farthest extent that I can play this. In reality, right. I'm going to be this guy. And he did it every single time. There's something to be said for those people. And I know it sounds crazy, like you live in a world where everything's like supposed to be, you see behind the curtain on every little thing. And I'm not saying you can't know some behind the scenes stuff. We obviously do with movies and we still like movies, but it's also pro wrestling has to have some sort of something that you respect about it.
Yeah. 100%.
All right. Well, I feel like I talked long enough. I've rambled on. Do you guys have anything to add to this conversation before I wrap this thing up?
No, I lost audio. In all honesty, like my headphone went out for like the last 2.5 minutes, so I was just trying to like nod. But I'm sure I agree with everything you said, Gary.
One creepy thing about you, Will, that I noticed while I was talking and I could see you is that your ear keeps flashing purple, and it was really weird.
Well, that's so funny. It's these earbuds when I first turn them on, and there's like a little light on the top. It's like blue, purple, or red. And the purple is like the noise canceling or something like that. I don't know. But it starts, so like as soon as I take it out and put it back in, it like starts flashing. But yeah, like my whole ear lights up. It's kind of wild, but that's funny.
You guys talking about ROH in the chat. I still, by the way, like I said, I would 100 times take that over setting somebody on fire in the ring. ROH, when those guys get in the ring, you believe it. Like they wrestle. They go at it. Like they try to fight for it. If you listen to not to shamelessly self-promote again, but if you listen to the Tom Latimer interview, he straight up even says the guys he likes wrestling. We talk a little bit about that as we get further past all the heavy stuff. He talks about, he mentions Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley. He mentions what's that guy? Jackson Riker. He even mentions him. He mentions a few different people that he's like, I've been in the ring with them, and you have to legitimately fight them to do what you want to do. He's like, they will not just go with whatever you want to do. You better make them do it. And he's like, I appreciate that about pro wrestling. He's like, when I'm in there, I want the guys that make me wrestle you. Like, even though it's what it is, he's like, it's a match when we're in there. He's like, Drew will work with you. He says this in the interview, but you could go get the better story for him. But he's like, Drew will work with you, but you better make Drew work with you. Like, he's like, you better go after Drew, because if you don't, he will walk right over you. Like, because he's not just the guy that's going to flop around and just be there for you. Like, you got to make him do the stuff. And you could feel it when Tom talks about it, that it's like, it's a different thing. He's like, there's these guys that just, they're still tough. They're still fighting. They're still like, they want it to be as real as they can make it. And Drew Galloway, Ricky Donna, he's talking about Drew Galloway / Drew McIntyre. That's who he's talking about. But yeah, he describes Drew as like one of his favorite people to wrestle. That Drew wrestles hard, and he like makes you compete with him. And anyway. All right, fellas. Well, I guess we're going to wrap this thing up. Thank you guys so much. Ricky Donna, Front Row, Ron, all you guys, thank you for being here all the way to the end. There's people, James A. Jackson Jr., anybody who's not saying anything, I know you're out there. We see the numbers on the chat, so I know people are watching that aren't even saying anything, so God bless you. Thank you for hanging out with us. This helps keep our numbers up, so we look at Sunday nights as just a time to chill and hang out with fellow wrestling fans and talk about wrestling stuff. Front Row, God bless the Nation Show. Can I just say, we would have been stranded in Austin, Texas if it hadn't been for the Nation Show. So go hit subscribe on their channel too, because they have a YouTube over there. They do great interviews. They got a lot of Mission Pro stuff coming out. So if you like Mission Pro women's wrestling, you got to check out the Nation Show. But listen, here's the story. I have this hat right now. I think I'm sure I've told the story. If I haven't, then good. If I have, sorry. But this hat is for Family Business Beer Company. Part of the deal was we went to Austin and we went out to Dripping Springs, Texas, which is the home of Family Business Beer Company. This is for my wife because Jensen Ackles owns this brewery, and he is from Supernatural and all of that stuff. Thank you, Scooby, by the way. And so we got an Uber out there, and we couldn't get home. It started pouring rain. We're standing on a patio. We were never panicked because we were surrounded with beer, but we were drinking. And then we were just like, it's time to head back. And we Ubered. And Uber just flashing, searching for a ride. For 30 minutes, we hit Lyft. Somebody hit Lyft. Like, all right, Lyft. Searching for a ride. We're like, okay. Well, this is troublesome. And so Doc calls a cab company, like the nearest cab company. And they say, where you at? Where you going? Okay, $120. We're like, geez, Louise, like that is too much money. But what else are we going to do? And so we say, okay. And they're like, all right, well, hold on. I got to call you back. So then we wait, and then they call back, and they're like, never mind, we don't have anybody. And we're just like, what the hell are we supposed to do? We're in Dripping Springs, Texas. Our place is in Austin, whatever. I texted Front Row, and I said, hey, man, we're stranded at this brewery. Like, I don't know what we're going to do. And luckily, Front Row says, hold on. And immediately after, I get a message from Tony. And and Tony, part of the Busted Open Nation, hits us up. And he says, I drove my truck down here. Do you guys need a ride? And we're like, we'll pay you. yes, we need a ride. We need to get back. And he's like, won't accept payment, coming to get you. And he drove all the way out to Dripping Springs, Texas, picked us up, drove us back into Austin, would not accept payment. We offered to buy him all the beers he wanted, anything he wanted at Mission Pro Wrestling at Pinball's Kingdom. The guy took 2 beers off of us, and that's all he took.
Bud Lights too, man. Bud Lights. Like we would have bought him anything. We'd have bought his dinner. We want to take care of this guy, and he's like, man, just give me a Bud Light. Tony Adams.
That guy, good man, Busted Up a Nation, good people. Subscribe to their YouTube. They really are the best. They're our friends, legitimately, and we would still be sitting at this brewery right now if it weren't for Tony Adams coming to pick us up. We'd just been like, I guess we live here now. I don't know.
No, go over to Nation Show and give them a like and follow too. They're doing good stuff over there, and they really are like-minded people. They're part of the hashtag NWA fam, and we're indebted to them. And we were indebted to them before this, and we were already tight. But they just show repeatedly how great a group of guys and gals they are, and front rows always representing them here. So shout out to the Nation Show. Fantastic group of people.
Oh, they were hanging out. They got their love over at Mission Pro Wrestling. They were hanging out with Mark Henry over there on the side. And shout out to Front Row who introduced me to Mark Henry. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I didn't want to ruin his time by talking his head off, so I just did the fist bump and was like, hey, man, I like you. And that is our discussion. But anyway, met Mark Henry thanks to Front Row. So
all I said to him, I gave him a fist bump too, and I was like, hey, remember that thing with Mae Young? You the man. You the man.
I was going to say, did you ask him about his little hand child?
You
paying child support on that? You paying child support on that hand?
Let me give you a hand with that.
Booyah. All right, thank you guys so much for hanging out. That's it. This is Will Martin. This is Gary Horn. That's at This is Dr. Stinson. We are at TIPW Show on everything. God bless you if you've been hanging out with us. You boost our YouTube hours, and we're legitimately just here to hang out with you. Hopefully, the chat, we included you enough, and you enjoyed the discussion, and we legitimately love you guys. And yes, Ron Gibson, that shows how close the wrestling community is. Good story. That's the best part about this. This is what we do the Sunday shows for. It's just for this wrestling community, because we all look out for each other. We take care of each other. We believe in each other. And so that's it. Thank you so much for hanging out. And until next time, you assholes enjoy your gravy cake.